This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks. With an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Beyond BMR. Of course, I'm your host, bigfootmichiganrob. Joining me in Studio B, as always, every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock in the East, the lovely Krista from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Please subscribe to the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast if not already. Of course, if you're new, subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube. Texas Front Porch, Monica Rollins, our Paranormal World. Donnie Cho says stuff, Paranormal Paul. Our guest tonight, Josh Turner. Check him out. Subscribe to him. He'll be joining us during the show for the show this evening. Have a great show for you. You can find us on Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, wherever podcasts are found. So, yes, check us out in podcast format. Y'all know the Super Chat's open. The Super Chat's a great way to help support what we all do around here. Thank you in advance for that. Your donations certainly appreciated, never expected. You also can become a BMR Pirate. That's right, mateys. Join today. Join the many. Join the few. Depends on your point of view, of course. Thank you for that. What you get an alternating picture of BMR in the chat room next to your name with the ever-changing bandana color. So, yeah, thank you for Keith from Michigan for the awesome super chat to get the show rolling. I appreciate you, Keith. Thank you. And thanks to each and every single one of you for coming on. And don't forget, everybody, hit that like button. It's all analytics these days, and the like button helps, and actually leaving a comment after the show does help as well. Also, I always have to make mention for all you lovely folks out there that bought my books. You know, their Bigfoot Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters Book 1 and Book 2. They're on Amazon. Simply type Bigfoot Michigan Rob in your Amazon browser. And those that have bought it, once again, thank you. Leave a review when Amazon comes a-calling. Because, again, much like YouTube, it's all analytics. It does help promote the sales of the books. We also have a conference coming up, which we'll talk about briefly before we get the show started. But before I do that, I bring it up my partner in crime, the lovely Krista.
Hey.
Hey, Krista.
Hey. Happy Tuesday.
It's Happy Tuesday. I love Tuesday. One of my favorite shows. We have like so many shows. Everybody turn on your alert bells.
Right.
Between myself, the Blondes and the Booze on YouTube, Tex, Donnie, Paul, Monica.
A gazillion shows just because I know me and Brandy alone, we do 5 a week or 11 a week between the two of us. So she does 6, I do 5. So yeah.
Yeah, and I do Tuesday nights with you at 9 o'clock, and I do Thursday afternoons with Tex at 1. And of course, I can't believe our Saturday night show.
Thanks, T-Bone.
Thank you so much, T-Bone. 5 new pirates. Mateys. Thanks to T-Bone. I got to give it up for T-Bone because the young man is just fabulous with his generosity. Thank you so much, T-Bone. Shout out to T-Bone.
He's generous on all the shows.
He is generous across all of our network. Brent Thomas, who sometimes moonlights with me and Tex Thursday afternoon, even mentioned that about T-Bone. So T-Bone's just an awesome supporter of all of us. Thanks to T-Bone. Special shout. T-Bone, you got a wrench. You requested a wrench not too long ago, Krista, so I gave him one. Mm-hmm. Well deserved.
Well, I know you lost a lot of your wrenches.
I lost like half of my wrenches.
Hey, Nellie's back. You can make her one.
Yeah, Nellie's back. She was a wrench.
Yeah,
Nellie was a wrench. Hi, Nellie. She's a wrench.
Sure she was a wrench.
And I lost, a lot of the wrenches. So I forgot who the heck were wrenches.
Right.
And I don't know. It's a YouTube thing. YouTube's kind of crazy.
It is.
With that said, I'm gonna try to hook that up for Nellie right quick.
Yep.
But Saturday night, do you believe, Krista, that we've been doing the Saturday night show for a year now? Me, you, and Brandy.
Wow.
And Monica.
I know, like you did a couple with Brandy by you and Brandy, and then I know you and I did several late nights, and then you're like, well, let's just all do it, so here we are.
Yeah. I mean, for whatever the reasons, I can't add good old Nellie, and maybe you can try it. You're a managing mod. I don't know. See, my stuff's messed up, so I apologize. Some of you mods are not mods because
it won't let me add her.
I don't understand. Why made you a managing person? Let me see if I can do something here. Yeah, I can't do anything. I cannot do anything.
Yeah, do it from. Can you do it from your phone?
I was just on the phone, and it's what irritate. YouTube does kind of irritate me.
Yeah,
a little bit with certain things, and I know it's not that big a deal. I'll get that figured out though.
Yeah.
But thanks for everybody for coming on and hit that like button. Mm-hmm. And why don't we? I'm gonna pull up our banner, and you can because I can't read the banner. Without putting on my cheaters. You know how that rolls. Good old BMR. I wear glasses, but not really. So why don't we go over this right quick? I will pull up the banner for you, though, Krista.
Okay.
Here it is. All
right. Everybody, it's September 19th and 20th. It's the Crossing Realms Conference in Richmond, Missouri. We have just a little bit of anybody and everybody going to be there. So if you're into anything weird, any paranormal, UFO, cryptid, ghosts, it's all going to be there. So tickets are on sale under Blondes and Booze on Eventbrite. Or you can type in Crossing Realms Conference. It'll get you there too. Or I have it pinned in the Blondes and Booze Facebook group. So guest star Josh Hurd, great guy. He's the owner of Malvern Manor. He's done a lot of the TV shows and stuff that y'all have seen throughout the years. Heather Mosier, if you guys, Small Town Monsters, you can't beat that. They're top of the line there. Will Lunsford, he's great. Lady Ann Celine, Ron Murphy, Dr. Dean Bertram. Greg Ogles is our buddy. Frankie and Dan from Haunted Souls. They're actually a part of Brandy and I have joined their team. So teammates of mine. And then Sir Brian Bowden, we all know him. He's been on all of our shows a gazillion times. And Miguel Ramirez, Sasquatch Theory, and good guy. And you guys stay tuned to his show because BMR will be on his show soon. And then last but not least is Martin Groves. He will be coming over there too. And then special guests, we have Ken Gerhard, Dana Stricker, Brent Thomas, Ryan Edwards, Mike Familiant, Chris Garitano, Linda Eastburn, David Glidden, Danielle Stedman, Dale Boswell, and our very own Donnie Cho wanted to be under special guests.
Yeah, Donnie Cho says stuff. Different show, nothing like what we do. But if you want to kick back and let your hair down.
Yeah, and you're not easily offended. You cannot be easily offended.
He promotes the F-bomb. So hey, it is what it is with Donnie. That's the way he rolls.
That's his show, and he that's the way he rolls. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, if you guys are in the area and or not in the area, because we have people coming from all over the United States that have bought tickets to this conference, and so we'd love to see you. We'd love to have you, and we'd love to meet you.
And with that being said, I'm not here to scare people away either. The ghost hunt, I think you mentioned, is sold out, but we're doing the other thing the day prior. And also, though, you guys, the hotel that we're all staying at
is booked.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It's already booked.
It's totally booked.
We're talking about an event that is 6 months away. It's September 19th and 20th.
Yeah.
So the other hotels are starting to fill up. And
Yep. So the one that is actually there in town, Richmond, is not a big town. Like you blink your eyes, you're pretty much through it. So that hotel did book up, and that is the Super 8. However, 8 miles away is a town, Lexington, Missouri, and it's actually a cool town. It's a Civil War town. They actually had a battle there, and it was a battle of the hemp bales, which is really cool. But anyway, I got squirreled there for a second. But they have a hotel there. It's called the Lexi Inn, and they're pretty reasonable. And I know people who stayed there, and it's clean. It's just a low key hotel. And then, or if you have a lot of money and you want to be fancy, you can stay at the Elms in Excelsior Springs, and that one is pricey and it's haunted.
oh wow, this is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. The haunted car, everything. It's a 2-day event. I'm going to get down there at least Wednesday now. I might as well make a whole week out of it, you know?
There you go.
And I know airline prices are coming down because of the craziness going on in the air. And I don't make that light. I don't make fun of that, you know? So I'm going to have to, but I'm going to wait when it's a little closer, I think. I got... Really quickly, I got to give a special shout out because this guy shouts me out all the time. I discovered his channel, I don't know, a while back, because from text, actually. Eddie and Jean, the vlogs, and then some.
And actually, we met Eddie last year at the Kling Brothers Lone Star Paracon, which I hope to see him again because Brandy and I will be there in 2 weeks or 10 days. And so we hope Eddie and them will be there and we can talk to him.
I was in Eddie's chat room just the other day. I've been there about 2 or 3 times when I catch a live, and he's such a nice guy, him and his wife.
Very much so.
And from what I understand, he adopts, children.
Yep.
And his son's in the background all the time. And I came on, he's dropping my links. He's saying nice things about me to subscribe. And so I will return the favor to Eddie because he's just a wonderful person and human being. And I can't wait to get on his show and have him on our shows.
Absolutely.
Because he's very entertaining and he's very big into the paranormal. So check out Eddie and Jen, the vlogs and then some. I can't drop the link. I'm having a hard time leaving mine, but check them out. Check them out, you guys.
Yeah, and it looks like he said he's going to be at the Lone Star Paracon, so we look forward to seeing you again. It'd be great to see him.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we got a lot going on, actually, Rob.
We're busy. I mean, it's like I will say this. You have a lot going on. I've got a lot going on. I've been doing more and more other people's shows now just to get out there and help out and support others. And frankly, it helps us all, right?
Yeah, we have to.
As a community. And I'm like almost on air 7 days a week, it seems. The only day I take off is Sunday, really. And I'm going on someone's show on Sunday.
Right.
I don't mind doing it, but there's going to be a point where I'm going to take a little break, especially with the summer coming. Not with our shows, but so I'm trying to cram in as much as possible.
Yep.
And speaking of another person that's extremely busy, like all the time.
Yep.
A friend of mine, a friend of yours, of course. I'll waste no haste. I see he's on his phone looking down. He's busy. He's always working, this guy.
Yeah.
Josh Turner's backstage. I'm gonna bring him up.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Hey man, how you doing, brother?
Good. Sorry about being a little bit late. I had work stuff going on.
Yeah, I always I get it. I expected you to come on. I spent about 12 minutes during the introduction and all the advertising, and so you got time to do your thing. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule as always, man.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yep.
So.
Did your wife tell you, Wolf?
About what?
In about 10 days, we're going to be in your area. I told her to keep your schedule open that Saturday night.
Okay. What do you got going on?
So we're going to that conference, Brandy and I. And so that Saturday night, see what you guys are doing. And
okay. Which conference is that?
It's a Lone Star Paracon, the one the Kling Brothers.
Oh, okay. Kling Brothers, yeah.
Tex is going. I believe Monica's going. We'll all be there.
Well, I'll head down. I'll head down that day then. I'll
Yeah.
actually go to the conference this time instead of just
Cool.
showing
That
up.
would be great.
I'll make it as a point to get out of to try to. I had a bunch going on the last few days. I'm working on 2 or 3 different projects. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to say something. And you guys maybe have already announced it or said something, but Barton Nunley,
We haven't talked about it.
he's not well, and everybody knows it was very public that him and I are not the best of friends. But it doesn't matter because I don't want anything to happen to him. It doesn't matter. So please, if you could, just say some prayers for him.
Yep.
And for Letitia, because at the end of the day, I don't hold any hate in my heart. I don't.
Mm-mm.
People said things about me today online, and I'm just like, oh well, I'm not going to carry it with me to the other side. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I did want to do one thing. I wanted to show you guys something. I was really stoked about this. So I've been working out, but then the last 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks, I haven't been able to because I had gout in my elbow. But I actually. So I put my shirt on. This shirt was like starting to get a little bit tight on me. Now it's actually getting looser on me. So the other day when I did this live where I was walking around, I did a bunch of walking and stuff, and everybody was like liking it, whatever. Some people that don't like me, they were just like, "Oh, he's breathing hard. He's out of breath and he's out of shape." Well, here's a picture. Now, of course, I'm sucking it in a little bit, but look at that. That's not Photoshop either, guys.
Yeah, that's pretty swell.
There you go.
So I had to take a picture. I said, okay, and I had to suck it in a little bit, but that's me. I don't have this humongous beer belly like they keep trying to say that I'm like this giant fat guy, and I'm not. Like, I've lost 40-something pounds since the conference, and so that's the other picture. Right there. It's just me.
Yeah, no, you're looking good, man. People are gonna say what they're gonna say because they have nothing better to do.
Yeah, and they keep saying that I had this. There's this right here, just so people know, that is what the Leviathan thing looks like. And it has nothing to do with my necklace. I had a bunch of people messaging me about that. So, tomorrow on my show, I'm going to show people, like, look, this is what this is, so that they'll understand the difference between a sailor's cross and that. Because there's just a few people, and, they weren't trying to be snarky. They were seriously asking if that was, like what it was, what it looked like. And I said, look, I looked it up. And this is what it looked like, or it looks like. It's not something that I'm into. So that's it. I just wanted to get started with that. And so I've been on a diet, and just not really a diet. It's just a lifestyle change. It's like a diet. You do it and then you go back to being whatever. And so I'm just trying to eat better, and exercise.
Well, really quickly too, on that point, you're absolutely right. I have friends, family members. There's a battle with their diet, this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. We've all gone through it. We go through it on a daily basis, especially since I'm like in my 50s now. I noticed that you got to do a little more to keep it off. But some of these folks out there, it's about changing your lifestyle. And I just found, for me, just eat less. I mean, it's crazy. I know a lot of people aren't into working out, exercising every day. I know you do, Josh, but I'm into it. I did it for many years and I quit. I lagged. I got older. I said, man.
Yep.
But I find that if I just watch just simply what I eat, nothing more, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
You watch what you eat, garbage in, garbage out, right? And you shed weight. Thank you, Midnight Smoker, for that.
Also, I found too, you get your protein in and you drink your water.
Yeah. I drank a bunch of water today. And fiber is big. Make sure you get plenty of fiber.
Yep.
And just trying to take care of yourself. I'm pushing 50, so I mean I'm not a spring chick anymore.
I mean I got about well, maybe at least, if you're not 50, and I probably got at least 8 years on you.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't believe I'm almost 58.
You look away when you say it.
Like
a Vietnam vet, you're like,
hey, I can't. Hey, listen, I swear to you, I remember in grade school, and everybody, I don't know how old I was in grade school, maybe I was 8 or 9 or whatever it was, and they said that I went to Catholic school, and the nun was like, everybody calculate what the year will be when you turn 30.
Right.
So we did the math, and I'm like, man, I'll be an old man. I'm thinking of 30. How I so wish I was still 30,
Yep.
Yeah, young people they think you're old when you talk to them, and because they're always surprised by me when I'm at the gym and I'll talk to somebody, or if I'm getting coffee and it's a young person, and they'll be like, "You're 49," and I tell people that too, and it's also because I'm married, so I don't have to worry about impressing girls or anything like that, and so sometimes, and I'm not saying I'm like this good-looking guy, but sometimes you'll talk to a younger girl or something, and you're being nice. I want them to watch the show or whatever. And they might think you're hitting on them, and they're kind of like looking at me like, yeah. And then I'm like, look, I'm 49 and I'm married. And they're like, oh, it's like, no, man, I'm not. They're just like, because you know what they're thinking in their head. They're like, damn, this is an old ass dude. That's what they're thinking. Because I don't look 49. I really don't.
Right.
And so
no, you look fine. I mean, I wouldn't guess. I'd say 45, 43.
45.
Yeah, something. I mean, I don't want to offend you, but yeah, you look not in your close to 50 yet.
Yeah.
But I got this problem. People know that I always say this on the show because and you know this, Josh. I know Krista knows this. My dad passed away like 6 or 7 years ago. My mom by herself, and very sad, with my dad, 50 years of marriage anniversary. And I'm single, and I'm like, you know what, and my brother's married, and he's got a kid at home, this, that, and the other. And my house is big enough for at least 3-4 people. And I just sat and had a family meeting, and I said, I'm going to bring Mom into my house. So my mom lives with me because I didn't want her being alone by herself. Because if my mom is alone, if my mom is somewhere else far from me, I'll never see her. And I did not want to miss out on her golden years. She's 70. She just turned 79. So I moved her in 6 years ago.
That's good.
My problem is I can't pick up chicks now because I live with Mom. I think I live in my mom's basement. You know,
living with your mom, and you're like, no, she lives with me.
How old are you, dude? You live with your mom? Well, yeah, I moved into my house. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So when I'm trying to score some little female, I got to go through this bullshit. Then I said, what? Screw it. Either you like me or you don't. If you don't like a man that takes care of his mom, then I don't need you. That's how my mindset is.
Good way to look at it.
So
absolutely.
Which, yes. So I mean, it's hey, it's part of life, part about growing up, and they took care of us.
I'm just glad I don't have that. I don't wish to ever date again. I don't want to go on a date. I don't want to ever have to. I used to, go run around, do all kinds of stuff. Nope. I had some dating adventures, bro. Believe me. I had one girl that she wouldn't get off her phone, and so I said, I'm gonna go to the restroom, and then I just went out the back. And then she finally called me when I didn't come back, and she's like, "Did you fall in?" I said, "No, I'm on my way home." What?
Right.
She's like, "Our food's here." I said, "Yeah, it's fine, but I went ahead and paid. I was nice. I paid, and I said, "Look, I paid, but you're on your own." And she just was busy. She was busy with her life on the phone always, and it was the second time, and I was like, "I'm good. This is not. You can't be any busier than me if I'm willing to set down my busy life, And that was way back in the gap before I met Nellie. And once I met Nellie, it was all over. So it's been downhill ever since.
Oh, you liar.
Nellie's over there like, what? Wait till you get home.
We know better.
It's 4:00. I'm still at the studio. I'm working.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what we're talking about tonight? We're talking about Dogman, or what are we?
Yeah,
doing?
the people love the werewolf. They love the Dogman. And I give the people what they want. You know that. I mean, I could talk UFOs and aliens, and half the people would drop off for some reason. But I find it fascinating. But I came across this. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that. There's always questions I still have to this day, but I want your take on something. And maybe you've heard about this. I had a guy on, and you've seen part of this show. This is like a last month. And he said, Rob, that guess is pretty cool. This, that, and the other. We were talking. It's kind of werewolfish. It's about these. He was talking about the hounds of the hounds of God. The hounds of God, right? Not to get all religious, but this is what they were called. It was part of this Illuminati type of thing. They were part of a secret society of werewolves. That actually was back in the 1800s, he was telling me, and how about they were put out, they were men, shapeshifters turned into werewolves, and they were here to eradicate demons from the lands. And it was getting into it about how this started, and I never heard about a werewolf, a dogman, if you would say. Um, Whenever we hear about these things, it's not like helping people or eradicating demons, because a lot of people associate dogman with evil or no good. At least most stories people I've spoken with. And I just found it hard to grasp that there was a society, and this was started and recognized by the church. And I was wondering if throughout your career talking about these creatures, if you've heard about anything, a secret society of werewolves or covens.
Sure. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I did the Werewolf Confessions, and that was about a guy named Charlie who told me some pretty wild stuff. But he backed it up with like several other people. So unless all of these people got together and decided to troll me, I don't think that they're lying. I don't think that they're wrong. And since then, and what happens with our show, what's really great about I'm talking about my show. What's really great about us, I'm just saying, no, the really cool thing about our show is that we actually will get people who will listen to the show.
Yeah.
Guaranteed 100%. And I tell you right now, Anthony, Nelly, Tony, Scorp D, everybody who's involved with us, everybody, they'll tell you like as soon as we drop a show and talk about a subject, somebody will email us. At least one or two people, and they'll say, look, I have a very similar thing, and then you'll get another thing that'll spin off from that. What happened with the Werewolf Confessions, though, was really interesting because he introduced me to Joel, a guy that when he told me the story, when I read, it was just a little bit I read, and I was like, I need to talk to this guy. So if you're somebody who I've told the story, you know how it works, I'll message you. And if you decline, that's fine, but you get a better chance of getting the story on the show if I talk to you. So it's probably 2/3 of the things that I do. I try to talk to the person, at least briefly. Sometimes they'll just say, I can't really talk about a whole lot, but I message you again and I'll give you more detail. But it's always better to talk to them if you can. Mm-hmm. And I told this guy, I said, look, this is a pretty bold claim and I've heard it before. And I'm going to say something else, and this is the absolute truth. I've gotten, and we all of us here at PRT have seen photos. I don't know how real they are, but there's a couple videos we've gotten and photos that look like people undergoing changes. And I gotta say, a couple of them are pretty convincing. I don't know, and we're still kind of like not into putting up pictures and whatever, because it just leads to fights. I did it the other day, and it was just a big bunch of people arguing and whatever. You could take a picture of a rose that you just took from a garden, and they'll say, that's fake. And it's like, I just took it from my garden. It's fake. Your garden's fake. You're fake. Everything's fake. It doesn't matter. They're going to argue. Everything's fake. So I don't really like to do that, because then that just leads to, more issues. There was a girl at this coffee place that we just went to while we were waiting for our dinner, which I'm not going to eat till after we're done. But she showed us video, ring camera footage of orbs and a shadow being. Like, she showed it to us, and she said she'll send it to my email. But it was crazy. She was showing it me and Anthony. And so there's tons of this stuff. But, I told her, I said, I believe you, but there are people who aren't going to believe you because there's AI. And AI has changed the game to where now it's so ridiculous that you can't tell what's real and what's not. And so when this guy started telling me about this order that he was in, and he really didn't call it an order. He just said that it was like, he goes, we belong to a temple. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, I wasn't really, I had heard something similar to that before, but not on that kind of level. And to me, it was a game changer, because I went ahead and I spoke to this guy. And so when I called him, he answered the phone like, hello. He wasn't like, hey, yeah, let me tell you about me being a werewolf. He was just like, hello, Right. And he had this real Southern, he's from Mississippi, and he just talked like this. He says, look, I'm going to tell you right now, you believe it or you don't. I don't care. He's like, you were recommended to me. He's like, and I want to get the information out there. He goes, I'm a born again Christian now. And he goes, and you don't understand the evil that we're fighting in this world. He goes, the world is not the way people think it is. And I was like, okay, elaborate, And so he said, look, I was taken, and he told me the whole story. These women, he went back to their place or whatever, and they bit him. They attacked, but he still had coitus with them, you know what I mean? And they did something to him, They exchanged blood is what he thinks it was what did it, because one of them had a cut, and then they put it in his mouth, and he was just like, oh, what are you doing? Like, and he's like, and then they bit me. He goes, I didn't realize how bad it was. He goes, I go home and I look in the mirror, and there was the bite was way too big to be of a human. Like, there was like teeth marks at the top, teeth marks at the bottom, and it was like several inches. And he's like, what in the hell is that? And then he goes to sleep, and he's in and out of sleep for like 2 days, and so there was all this weird, the internet's kind of going up and down. So he undergoes sort of like, I guess, a metamorphosis, but he doesn't change. He doesn't have, nothing happens to him. And then these people come to him eventually, and they tell him, come with us. This is what's going to happen. And it involved drugs, because it wasn't him doing it so much. It was, they were dealing drugs. Mm-hmm. And the people that they were dealing with, it was his aunt's boyfriend, who was only a few years older than him. And his name was Joel. And so he kept referring to this guy, Joel, who practiced vampirism. And he was like, he's like, it happened to me and Joel, and he kept saying this guy's name. And I said, okay, so I need to talk to Joel, and he goes, well, I don't know if you can do that. And I said, well, and I just told him point blank, I said, look, you don't want to come on the show and talk about it. I understand that, because you don't want to hear your voice, see your face, whatever. I said, but at least show me some proof of this. Let me, talk to these other people. And so I talked to a woman named Samantha, a woman named Eve, another guy named Carlos, and I talked to Joel. Mm-hmm. And they are now all born again Christian. They live in different places. They all live in the South, though. One of them lives in Florida and goes to, she's real big in her church, and her husband. And he told me some freaky stuff just like about a month ago. Me and him were talking, because there is something, and they think it's the other, what they call the other, that attaches itself to these people and gives them these abilities. That is actually stalking her, still trying to bond with her, like venom, like it's a weird thing,
So the things called the other are a part of this society, then?
Yeah, the other is what makes it work. It's what makes it go. It is like the battery that attaches itself to them, and it gives you that ability. Really and truly, though, the way they didn't even describe it to me like this, from talking to them, the way that I kind of break it down, I think that, I have my own theory.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they didn't even really grasp this, because they weren't in it long enough to have gone up the chain to be more powerful. But what I think it is that they were, I want to say, like, somebody's, it's like, it opens up things in you that you didn't know were there. Like, you didn't know it existed. Like, you thought, hey, this is the world, and it's like this. And then this opens it up into a whole nother ball game. And then the world as you know it changes, and I think that this other opens that up for you. Mm-hmm. But it needs a host. It needs a physical being to enact its, and they kept talking about the principles. The principles were these like rules that they had to follow, but it was, and they had to enact all of this stuff, and a lot of secrets were opened up to them. Not so much for Charles as much as Joel. Charles he's a big guy. He's like 6'6" or something. And Joel is not nearly as big, but he chose to become a vampire. Now, I know it sounds goofy, it sounds like underworldy, and it sounds like whatever, but the fact of the matter is this: those two are inextricably linked, because they're both shapeshifters in different ways. Mm-hmm. And so I think that the reason that people have these encounters and they're so closely related is because you're given a choice. Now, werewolf is not the only choice. You could become something else. You could be a werefox or a werebull even. I've even heard weird stuff like that. Or werebears, which is another choice. But it depends on the other. that latches onto you. And werewolf just is the more commonly chosen form, because a bear is big and bulky and it has you're going to be seen. A werewolf is not nearly as and you have a certain level of pack mentality that goes with that. And I take it a step further. I think that it goes back to ancient alien. I think these things came from somewhere else, and I started hearing them talk about this black goo or substance that they would vomit up after every time they did this. And I'm like, yeah, it's partly a byproduct, but it's also something that they have to ingest too to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so it's really weird and it's very disgusting. But these people will do anything for power. And I've always said it too. It's a sucker's deal, because you're basically going out and saying, okay, I'm going to give up, I'm going to get like 30, 40 years, and then I'm going to spend eternity in hell, in a hell prison, Why would you do that? But these people do. Now, he was kind of not really given so much of a choice. We all have free will, but his choice was, something about us now, so you die or you do this. And they went and got Joel and made him do it too. And they basically told him, like, look, you can be all these different things. You can do all these different things, but you have to make a choice what you want. And then you have to study and practice as that. The vampire part of this cult, I say it was a cult, and they do too, was more about the esoteric and learning magic and basically being like a blood drinking sorcerer, right? They could shapeshift too into other things. They could go into what they would call like shadow form, and they could not be seen. And the way everything looks when you become that is like everything looks like a black and white, but you can see in the dark. And so they can become like shadows. So when people tell me about shadow encounters now, I think twice about what it could be, because it could be a shadow of the living. So, somebody that's practicing the occult or vampirism, it's not always like a deceased person or a demon. It's really, it could be just a person that's still alive, and they're seeing it. Now, the people who have the eye, they're more likely to see that. But back to this werewolf thing, what Charles was telling me, he was like, look, I didn't really have a choice, and he goes, and I want the world to hear what I have to say. And so I actually, when I first talked to him, I was kind of like on the fence if I should even say anything, because I didn't know if I believed it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And after talking to Joel, and then Joel says, look, if you don't believe me, I'll give you these people's information. So I had these other people's information, their phone numbers, and one by one, they were like, yes, this really happened. And they were telling me, one of the people I talked to is a guy named Carlos, who's missing part of his jaw now. He had a very unfortunate thing happen to him. And he told me that basically, like, he goes, you got to understand something. If you weren't a born again Christian, and this isn't me throwing Christianity out there like, oh, you better become a Christian, because, if not, you're going to be, whatever. This is the truth. And he told me this. He says that you'd be a target. He's like, I wouldn't take this information to any of these other people who aren't practicing as a true born again Christian. So he says, what I'm about to tell you, he says, I'm going to let you wait and think on it until tomorrow. He's like, and he told me this. He goes, test your faith, study your faith, And it's funny that he said that, because Joel and Charles all kind of said the same thing. If I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then we need to know that you're strong in your convictions and in your faith, because if not, when you go out there and you start saying that, you're going to get attacked. Right. And you're going to get attacked like you've never been attacked. It's not, and I've already, and I'm like, I was telling them, I was like, well, I'm already getting attacked by these morons, whatever. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Like, these people will do everything they can to stop you, but they can't hurt you if you are in Christ, like truly in Christ. Right. Are you truly in Christ? And it was kind of to the point where when we were talking, I was getting kind of like aggravated, because you're like, they're being very pushy. And I haven't said this on the show, but I was thinking about doing an update episode anyway. So, but they were being like kind of pushy about it, and I finally, when I talked to this one woman, Eve, she seemed to be the most, no offense to anybody else that was involved in these conversations, but she seemed to be the most even killed. Sure. And she was very nice. She was very sweet, but she says, look, I was a practicing sorceress. She didn't say witch. She's like, I wasn't a witch. She goes, I was a sorceress. She goes, and I could shapeshift, and I was a vampire. And she goes, I drank blood on a regular basis. The other demanded it. It was sort of like a supplication, you know. And so she said that that it was basically like, you're in this cult and you have to do what they want. And it's almost like being in the mafia. It's every day a new chore, a new task. She said that the people who were trying to relay this information to you, along with myself, were just concerned about your well-being, because we didn't care. We just tell you, go ahead and go out there and say whatever.
Sure.
She's like, it's something that we've talked about before, about releasing this information, but how do we do it? But now with the advent of the internet and all this other stuff, this stuff's out in the open. But there's a dual-edged sword. Now you have all these different levels of communication and ways that you can disseminate this information. You have all these different media outlets, right? The problem, though, is that you have so many bullshit artists and charlatans and frauds and fakers, hoaxers, whatever, out there doing whatever, that when you tell people, they're not going to believe it. So, but that's a dual-edged sword in of itself, right? Because on the one hand, you tell the people, the right people will believe you, hopefully. And the top people who are up there, they're looking down going like, well, who cares? Nobody's listening to these people. What do you have? You have 40,000 people, whatever. And most of them are probably just going to think it's cool entertainment or something. That's how they kind of look at it. But like they were telling me, and they were very adamant about it, if you're born again and you're in the Christ shield, as they kept talking about Christ shield, they're like, if you're in the Christ shield, they're like, you're safe. They can't hurt you. They literally cannot hurt you. They can try to manipulate others to hurt you, but they themselves can't do it. And so they're kind of stuck. They can't, so the chances of you being attacked, killed, and eaten by a werewolf or a vampire go down astronomically by being born again Christian. And I'm not even joking. This is the truth, folks. I'm not even joking. And when they were telling me all this stuff, and I was going like, okay, all right, and I had to ask a lot of questions. And I know some of them probably got aggravated with me for asking so many questions. But when people are telling you this stuff, you're going like, I don't know, and then they were like, do you want to do this? Do you want to go forward and say what you have to say? And so the answer was 100% yes, but I had to be ready, to do it. So a lot of prayer and a lot of, it's just, you have to be ready to go forward, and the Christ shield has to be up. I'm telling you. But what it did was I feel like it made me closer to my faith. I think I started to pray more. I became more closer to just living my life correctly. Sure. Because now I'm under a microscope from everybody watching me, everybody, honing in on every little thing I do or say. And I think it's actually been a positive thing, because now I have to watch my back more carefully, and I need to be, and I really do think it's a positive thing. A lot of people, when they go through adversity and bad things happen to them, they just throw in the towel and they curl up and crumple up like a bug that's been stepped on. But you have to use it as a chance for growth. And a lot of people just don't. They miss the mark on that. And so that's what I do. I try to. And that's what I did with this. I just said, look, I'm gonna make sure that this, I'm gonna reaffirm my faith. And I'm very careful, coming and going wherever I'm at. And you have to be. Because at any time, if you left that spiritual opening, I know you guys know Abe C is. He's got spiritual encrypted encounters. He's always on late at night. Hold on one second, folks. I got something I got to do. Give me 1 second with my mouse here. Hold on.
Okay. Well, we appreciate everybody tuning in tonight.
Yeah, and while Josh takes care of that, off the bat, I gotta thank so many people for coming in. If you're new, subscribe to BMR and Krista. And really quickly before Josh gets going, since he had to step away, thanks to Keith, T-Bone, Kelly Lewis, Midnight Smoker, Eddie, Kelly, Alan, Joe, Alan again, Eddie again, Mary. And if I missed you, thanks for your awesome super chats and or donations for pirate members. Love you guys. Thanks for coming on in. If you're new, subscribe and hit the like button. Thanks. Very appreciative.
I see Ron Murphy. How you doing, Ron?
It's Ron Murphy, the legendary Ron Murphy.
Ron's great.
Yeah, he's a good guest.
Yes, he's actually coming to our conference. He's one of our speakers. He's speaking with Ann like he did at yours.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. So we have this this other that we were talking about. What it does is it attaches itself to the lower spine of these people, and when it attached itself to Charles, he said, "Dude, it was like excruciating pain." And then all of a sudden, he goes, "You feel like you're Superman." And he's like, "But then it'll come loose, from you, because it doesn't just stay on you all the time, and it'll move around the house and do things." He goes, "And at first you're walking around and it's popping up and doing things, and it's scaring the crap out of you, and it's like literally like having a satanic dog around with a high intelligence, and it wants things. It wants food, and it wants blood, and it wants this, and it wants that, and it uses this as fuel. And so, it's your job to feed it."
So I have a quick question real quick about it. Does it just stick with one person, or you have a family, does it feed off of others too, like the whole household, or is it?
No, typically from what I understand, that is a question I did ask. I asked Joel that question. Joel seemed to know a lot more about what this was. Charles was a soldier, and Joel was very, Charles made no bones about it. He goes, "My job was to hurt people and do things and go and retrieve things and whatever." And it's pretty weird stuff. It's pretty freaky. Joel was one of the people that was involved in the vampirism and the drinking of blood. And he was already to the level where he was starting to bring in more people like initiates. Like the first couple years you're involved in this, according to these people, allegedly, you can't really turn anybody to become whatever, because they don't trust you. And they don't want you starting your own little coven or pack, because that becomes a big problem for them, because then they have to go out and snuff you out and whatever.
Right.
And it, like you said, that they told me it's like being in the mafia. It's very much like that. It's like you're in this satanic cult basically, but they don't worship Satan so much as like there's this other being that they serve, and there's a couple of them, and I know that one of them that they talk about is a being called Amun, and Amun is one of their chief deities. And he is a serpent with a wolf's head, is basically what it is. It's a very weird, it's a Mesopotamian demon. I'll say demon is not the right word. Archon would be more the right word. It's like a fallen entity that became a Mesopotamian deity, in particular Assyrian and then later Babylonian. But it was, if you look at this creature, like you see, that's what they're serving, that's one of them. And they had this temple of Shay. They called it Shay. And that was where they went and did this stuff. But there were other temples. And here's the weird and freaky part. And since they told me this, I've seen a lot of this. They use all this occult symbolism, and they all have their own symbols and stuff. They don't use the same stuff like some of these people flashing different symbols. Those are covens and packs and things that and the symbolism is very weird, because you won't know. It's like you don't recognize it. They'll use like a cursive letter or word on a business, and the way they'll do the S, will spiral away, and it'll do, and you'll see it. Now I'm seeing it in different places, and you go into this place, and you're like, okay, this person is probably, working with these people in some form or another. And they told me about all these different symbols. And so that's also a territory thing, because the bad guys aren't all on the same team. I keep telling people this. They're not all playing for the devil. Like people say the devil. There's a bunch of devils, and there's a bunch of gangs that belong to these different devils, and they fight each other as much as they fight, the good guys. They fight each other just as much. That's their Achilles heel. And that's one thing, a long conversation I had with Eve was, Evelyn told me, she's like, look, she goes, the Achilles heel is that they don't play well together. Like they build a group, and then the next thing you know, they're attacking each other as much as they're fighting everybody else, because that's just in their nature. And so it's in evil's nature to not be loyal. And everybody that's there wants to have more power. Right? They crave it. They want more power. So you have people at the top that are constantly having to suppress these little rebellions, and but it's also they also what is the word? They push that spirit of rebellion, because you have to be in rebellion against God constantly. and you have to reject. For them, they reject Christ and they blaspheme and everything else, the Trinity. So it's like, yeah, my brother just said competing cartels. Yes, it is. That's what they are. And so and they do horrible things too. Like they offload weapons from military bases. They sell drugs. I'm not joking. 9 times out of 10, any gang that's doing anything evil, and they're really up there, they're practicing a form of black magic.
Yeah, I was about to ask you. You read my mind. I said, how much of this is associated with black magic or dark
terrorism? Everything from terrorism to cartels, everything. There are symbols. There's this one symbol that I've seen over and over again. There's scorpion with the curved tail, and the scorpion's curved like this. It's like that. It's like this weird sideways, and then there's this upward looking thing that kind of sticks out of it. That's one of their symbols, and that's a cartel symbol. I'm not going to say who. I'm just because I don't want to ruffle feathers or whatever. But that's what they use, and they bless. Well, they say they bless it. They bless their product with these like the cartel. They use Santa Muerta. The saint of death. And she's a very real thing because they give her all this energy and make it, they make it there, So what happens is they bless their product with blood, and the blood of innocence is the strongest thing that they can do to push their product. Now, one of the things they did, this cartel, they not only did I say cartel, this group of werewolf vampires, whatever, they sold drugs. In particular, they liked to sell a lot of ecstasy, and they were channeling it through Israel, of all countries. It was one of the main countries that they used, and it was that country, and then there was another country that they had like a little base in or whatever where they used, and I can't remember if it was Argentina or it was some South American country, but it wasn't a cocaine country. That was a whole nother thing. They were focusing on these pills. And I asked them, I said, when you were involved, and this was back when they were involved, they don't know what they're doing now, but I said, why were they so focused on these pills? And one of the things they said, and this came from, not Carlos, God, I can't remember the guy's name. Anyway, it started with an H or something. I can't remember if it was Harvey, Henry. Anyway, there was a guy that I talked to briefly that I was introduced to by Carlos. And, he was telling me that the reason that they were pushing these pills, and now Carlos said you should talk to this dude because he was one of the people involved in that. And he said that the psychedelic, psychosexual, whatever that you got from ecstasy was like a big thrill, and they could get these people to loosen up their inhibitions through it.
Right.
And it wasn't as addicting. Now, you don't really get addicted to ecstasy or these other ones like you would cocaine. They wanted people to take these drugs and get all loose or whatever, and then they could use them either, with the offer of, hey, if you join our clique, you can become very powerful. And they'd show them some magic tricks, basically. And then, they would work with these people to do things because they want more of it. And they would mix their blood into this, and they would dry it out and make it into like this powder because their blood has this, what they called it, like the others, like serum or something like that, but that's not what it is.
An elixir.
It's like an elixir, but yeah, they call it the others serum, but it's to me, I think it's a parasite. I really do. And I think that vampirism is a parasite. And I've done so much other research on this that I'm not saying that I know more than these people because I wasn't involved in their cult, but they just know what they know from their experiences being, they don't know like the principles, they only knew the principles. They didn't know like where this came from. You know what I mean? Yeah. They didn't know like they just know what it did. They didn't really know like the origins and all that. I started to go into this deeply and do some research on it. And I started getting reports from people from way back, even before I met these people, talking about the black goo. Now, I really believe that vampirism is actually a virus. Well, I posted an article on my Facebook the other day, and people should go and look at that because it talks about the superbugs that are impervious to any sort of treatment. Like you can't stop them because the bacteria, right? Mm-hmm. So this bacteria is very powerful. You know why? Because these viruses actually infect the bacteria, and that's what creates the superbug. And the virus acts very much like a parasite. So during the vid, I'll call it that, people were taking a particular parasitic drug, and it was actually curing them. And it was also, people were saying, hey, it's curing cancer. Well, we know that certain viruses cause, cancer. Not all, but some, like the HPV viruses, the human papillomaviruses it causes cancer, cervical cancer in particular. Now, not all cervical cancer comes from that, but particular, that's one that it causes. And I tell you this, it's good to know science and know history, because if you don't know, then these people, they would tell you a bunch of stuff and you'd just be like, So and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying, do your research is what I'm saying.
Right.
And so I did a lot of looking into this. And I think that this virus spreads this parasite. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think this parasite I say this, and it's going to sound completely wacky coming from somebody that, but if you don't know me, if you know me, you know me. But it's intergalactic. Like, I'm not even joking. These things, it's not from here. It was brought here. And this is why it's important to not just focus on one aspect of the paranormal. This is why we have Paranormal Roundtable,
Right.
Because you get the full experience. One of the witnesses told me and Tony and Anthony, and they literally, she told us this, and it was very eye-opening when she said she was taken aboard a craft, but she wasn't sure if she was like in a warehouse or where she was at, in like a hangar. But these extraterrestrials, she was calling them extraterrestrials. You know what to call them. I was saying, no, I think those are interdimensional. Now, those are different, two different things. Really, they are. And she said that there was this creature that was hunched over inside of this cube. Now, people don't realize how important the cube is. Research the black cube of Saturn. It's literally a prison for an archdevil. I'm not joking. A lot of people believe that that's where Lucifer is actually being held. And now there's a reason for that. And that's a whole nother story. But just look it up. Black Cube Society. There's people that cubes are used as prisons, right? So there were these cubes that were kind of clear, but when they put this sort of a UV light on it, you could see it. And she was like walking through, and there was just one in particular that was hunched over, and it was naked, bald-headed, had these weird wings. And I had a witness on my show the other day. His name was Creed. He went by Creed. And he was talking about seeing one of these things. And we brought Ken Gerhardt on, and Ken, listened to the guy and talked to him, and he said that it looked kind of like the cover of the book that Ken wrote about flying humanoids back in 2016 or 15. I think it was 2015. So, and Ken was the one that helped me with my book on the dogman, and he did a lot of interviewing of people, and he was convinced that there was some, going into it, he was kind of like, yeah, dogman. And then afterward, he was like, holy shit, dude, like, what the hell? What did I just fall into? He interviewed like 20, 30 people for me. And I told him, I said, check this out. He interviews people. Nick Redfern. And I was like, dude, there's all these people that had seen these chupacabras. And they were talking about the chupacabra being taken from Puerto Rico to Cuba and then getting to Mexico because of the cartel. And they were using them as pets and guard dogs. I'm not even joking. I'm being serious. You piss them off, they feed you to the chupacabra. I'm not even kidding. And so I told these guys, these researchers and authors, I said, talk to these witnesses. If you don't believe me, interview these people. Listen to what they tell you, right? So this woman, she was in this hangar, and there was this cube, and she said she was drawn to it, and it was like this blue light. And she said that entity was mesmerizing her, and she didn't even see its face. She just saw it from the back and the side, and she was walking toward it. And then one of those aliens grabbed her and said, they didn't speak. They just told her, and through her mind, they were like, don't do that. And she turned and looked at them. They weren't hostile to her at this point. And so she was like, why not? And they said, that creature holds a germ, which you know of as a germ. And if it was loosed, it could destroy the entire world and it spreads it throughout the galaxy.
Really quickly, man, this is so fascinating, because a lot of times when we talk about werewolves, vampirism, I immediately go to dark magic, black magic, curses or hexes from First Nations or whomever, gypsies, right? Suggested with werewolves. But now this is a cool perspective, or something that I haven't really thought about, that when we talk about the galaxies and the aliens, right? That perhaps they are.
Thank you, John.
Indeed. Thanks, buddy, for John. Perhaps they're infecting, our country or our the planet Earth with a parasite, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of what you're suggesting, what you've been talking about here, which is a totally different viewpoint on this entire subject matter. which is why, of course, the round table.
Yeah. And so when you, yeah, and you get down this road to get to where we're at now, it took years of research and just, it started off with just getting these reports. And now, I talked to my friend the other day that I saw the dogman with, and he's a preacher in my hometown. And I got it. I'm talking to Anthony. Thank you. And so it's one of these things, like, we both thought about it and we've talked about it many times. And he said, I think that we were meant to see that.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, because now, he goes, I'm a preacher and you're out there and you're teaching people, not just telling encounters, but he goes, you're teaching people about, what's out there, what's really out there. So maybe, we were meant to see this thing. Now, I don't think that thing was a good thing. I've had people tell me, oh, it was an angel that you saw that was showing you so you would be scared and all this other weird stuff. And I'm like, I don't, no offense to people say that. That wasn't an angel. It was just the eye showing me, God allowing me with the eye to see that into the veil. And it was on Halloween night. And I saw that. And it was, it was very changing for me.
Right.
But the change didn't happen immediately. It took several more years of a bunch of other weird crap for me to actually start going, hey, I need to do something with this knowledge. I have all this knowledge that I've accumulated. And when it was one of my friends years ago, his name's Jerome, he's from Germany. He's a good friend of mine. And he told me, he said he works in the security business too, out in California. But he told me one day, he says, what are you going to do with all this knowledge? You've amassed all this knowledge. You've written like 30 something journals with all these encounters. Every time we go somewhere, you talk to somebody, are you going to do something with this?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know, And then my brother gets out of the army and we talk about it. And he's like, well, we should write a book, because he was into this, paranormal stuff, whatever. But at that time, he was really on the dark side. And I told him, I don't want to write a book with you, because he was doing things that wasn't my cup of tea. And he says, dude, he goes, I do these things. I look for it and I can't see it like you can. He's like, but you can do it naturally. And he was trying to convince me that I was already on the dark side and I should just like step on over to the other side of the aisle, but I would never let go of my faith. And I told him, I said, I am not doing things correctly. I'm not living my life correctly, but I love Christ. I really love Christ. I said, I could never betray him that way. I could never do that. And eventually I got him to come to our side of the aisle. And then we broke away from all of the bad things we were doing. And I can't even get into some of the things we were doing. It wasn't satanic or anything like that, but it was things that were not correct to do, Mm-hmm. And so, you can't live your life with 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You can't be half a gangster. You're either
Yeah. I mean, do you think then if you investigate these things like the dark side, I mean, like we all do, I mean, we have shows, we're all into this genre, we've all had experiences. So honestly, let me ask you, do you think that the more deeper you go down the rabbit hole and you don't have a belief system, that you can be susceptible to falling from the light to the dark?
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have a belief system, that's the most important thing for them, because then you don't have any base. And I think that a lot of what's happening, and I don't want to get political or anything like that, but I'm going to say this. If you don't have a basis in what your gender, your ethnicity, your political affiliation, you don't have any of that, then what is your identity? You have nothing. You're an empty shell. You're a clay, and they can take that and mold it. And that's what they look for, is people with just wandering through life with no real capacity. Yep,
absolutely. Even doing when we do like ghost investigations and things like that, if you're not 100%, you don't really necessarily have to be spiritual, but you have to know like you're protected and things like that. Then, I believe you are, with prayer and,
What Lawrence Morgan just said right there. He's like, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
These sayings are there for a reason. And Lawrence is an OG from our show too. I see a lot of paratroopers in here. Yep. But shout out to everybody under fire. I see you, Melissa, Freaky Geek, a lot of these people, I've seen them a lot everywhere, doing a good job. You got some really cool moderators. But thank you for tuning in, by the way, for everybody.
Yes, and for all the paratroopers, if you're a first timer, please subscribe to my channel. And of course, lovely blondes and booze.
please like and subscribe. And these are definitely good friends of mine, folks. They have been stood by me and my family through all the attacks and everything else that's gone on. And I was told, by Joel, who's actually a pretty good guy. I talked to him once in a blue moon every now and then. I talked to him last month. This is March? Oh crap. I think I talked to him back in January. So I'm like, when you get old, is this the other day? And it was like 20 years ago. You're like, wow, that was 99. Good grief.
Right.
Different when you get old, folks. And so, but I talked to him back in January, and every now and then he'll just say, like, hey, how's it going? Checking in with me and ask me how I'm doing. And we've talked about the spiritual warfare that afflicts us. And he says, he told you, he's like, he told me it was going to get worse. He's like, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And you just got to stand your ground and be strong. And I see Chris. What's going on, Chris? Chris Kramer, everybody.
I just booked him for our show.
Good. He's a good guy. I like him. He's
I
one
like
of my
Chris
favorite
too.
people out there.
Yeah, the chat is moving, so if I didn't say hi to everybody typing, I'm trying to listen to Josh and concentrate. Appreciate all you guys.
Mhm.
And really quickly, this Lori's been around for a little while. She's a newer person. She has this question that I think is interesting. Then I got to do something for my mom real quick, if you don't mind. I just lost it. See, the chat's already moving. Lori asked something about if you can find it. So I thought it was pretty pertinent. Okay, here. Really quick. Okay, I just have to ask, and I don't like to talk about it. The black cube of Saturn is really on Saturn. Is that where Lucifer lives? I'll be right back.
Okay. Now, that is another show. I'd have to do a whole show about that. The black cube. Now, the black cube comes up in multiple religions too, Judaism in particular, but also in Islam. It's found, and there's different. Now, in certain parts of the Levant, it's been outlawed. There are certain laws against it because there was a jinn king, and I'm not even going to repeat his name. You can go look this up. I don't want to say, because I don't want to invoke anything. I don't like, I just don't like to, but he built a prison. Get this, in what would be Qatar, now modern day Qatar. And it was made for the imprisonment of demons.
Wow.
It's really weird. So you're kind of going like, what is this? And then there's another one called the Seven Towers of Hell in Oman. And then that's another place, a whole nother story too. But these places are in the Levant, and it gets kind of, weird. But there's also a wall that was built by the jinn to keep other jinn out because they were so horrible. There's also a king from the 800s who fought a war. Ibn al-Sayyid, I want to say his name was, but I might be wrong. I've said it on my show. We've talked about it. But he fought a whole army of these jinn that looked like werewolves, and they were called the Adharit. And there's another one that's called the Ifrit, and then that one can be vampiric, and that could be where Solomon, the story of Solomon, as the Arabs call him Suleiman, and the Jewish people call him Solomon. But King Solomon, of course, he was David's son. Right. And he had this special ring that was given to him by God to imprison the jinn or the demons or whatever. And actually, they're not all the same thing. There's different kinds, different levels, whatever. Mm-hmm. But with this magic ring, he was able to imprison them, and he got them to build the temple, which is the temple in Jerusalem. Like, it was actually built by the jinn. But this is, this was history for the Jewish people and the Arabs. They believed this. Mm-hmm. And it's also it's like a matter of truth to them, the Key of Solomon, the Song of Solomon, the Lesser Key of Solomon. There's all these different ones that you can read and be careful. One of them was written by Crowley, and I think it's the Lesser Key of Solomon. I think that's the one. But he it's basically he's putting his jurisdiction on it. You got to be careful with that. But I've read all of these books, and I've read, like if you read the Kabbalah, and it's the book of Jewish mysticism, and then the Hadith, which is the esotericism of the Quran, and you go into all these. Now, there's one that's called the Shams al-Ma'arif. Now, I just want to go ahead and say that because the reason I'm willing to say the name of that book now, and I wasn't before, is very simple. Because when I opened my mouth and talked about it, a bunch of people went and started looking for it, and I wouldn't say the name of it. but people were stumbling upon it on accident and downloading it. So I'm going to give you a disclaimer here. Do not, I repeat, do not download that book. Do
Right.
not have a copy of it in your, if you if you're just absolutely just fired up and you have to, then go to a bookstore or somebody that has it and read it there and go home and be sure to be prayed up. Because when the Arabs talk about, this is very important, when they talk about what these beings, they always just say the jinn. They always use that term, the jinn, which means the hidden ones, the ones that hide, that you can't see, right? But on this one alone, they're very, very, very specific about who or what is guarding this book. And they say, without any batting of an eye, that it is guarded by these evil dark elves from the underworld.
Mm-hmm.
They will visit you and they will actually unalive you if you get that forbidden knowledge. And so having that book and just talking about it gives me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah.
I began to try to read that book. It's just like when I read the Iran.
Now we have access to this book.
You can go, but I would strongly doing it. But I'm going to say the name of it so somebody won't go and accidentally go and stumble upon it, because people were doing that. And now I've got 3 or 4 stories that came from people who, the weakest thing that'll happen to you is you hear 3 knocks. That's the weakest thing. You might hear and it's always up, like boom, boom, boom. And people will tell me that they've heard that, and then they stopped reading it, and they're like, okay, I'm done. But then they'll start to see these elf-like creatures, and some of them are smaller, and then there's always like this really big one that comes and it'll come to stand at the foot of the bed, and it'll try and unalive them through suffocation. And I'm not even joking.
Right.
I only have one person who downloaded it and read she read a big portion of it, and then she was choked in her sleep. And so I said it on the show, please don't download this book. It's not something you should play with. It's not something you should, I heard the snapping. I heard the pop, 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 several times when I was trying to read it. And I didn't download it. I was just, and I said, okay, I'm done. I'm not even going to do that. And then something scratched the door, and I was like, there was a scratching at the door, and it wasn't one of my pets. So I'm like, okay, this is done. We're done. So I gave up. Now, there was a man that was behind the pushing of this book. He was a Lebanese guy who was into the dark arts. It was said to be a shapeshifter, and some people think he faked his own death. He's still alive. People see him to this day. I'm not even going to get into who he is, and he started a cult. So enough of that. So that book is, let's just not look, don't even mess with it. But there are all these occult-like books that will teach you and show you different ways to funnel these creatures into your life. Now, why would you want that? It sounds insane, and it really is. But the people that want this, they want power so bad that they're willing to trade anything and everything for this power. But it comes with a huge price.
Yes. And
people, most of the time, you don't really know what you're getting into, and you're not going to be able to pay it. And I say this, the human mind can't really fathom what the nature of reality is. We don't really know. I've seen things, I've been out of my body before, and I've seen things that I can't even relate to you with words because I don't know how to describe it. There's nothing that you can compare it to. The color spectrum is off the charts. It's not something that I've ever seen in this world. So you can't really, and I know a lot of people who've seen a lot more than I have, and this stuff happens too. Like after you read and study this, like I've fallen asleep reading these books. That is the biggest problem because I'm nodding, I'm tired, and I'm not saying a prayer on my exit, and so you're like, guess what? You invited something and now it's going to come, because if you're in that in-between state where people often see like these entities, that's where they see them. And that in-between, like I'm awake, I'm asleep, I'm awake, I'm asleep. That is where a lot of people have these encounters, right? Yeah. Well, and that is one of the most dangerous states to be in, because if you're not prayed up, that's where they're going to come, and you're going to be able, but the thing is, you're going to be able to see them. And it's actually better to be in that state than it is to be fully asleep.
Right.
Because in your sleep, they'll drag you out of your body and do things, and you'll think, oh, it was a really scary dream. No, that wasn't a dream. That was you being assaulted out of your body. So you have to be very careful with this stuff. But these people that were in this temples, what they were doing, back to that, they were like practicing, this was their life. They were doing this. Now, if you go to the show and you listen, most people here probably already heard it. The Vampire Confessions and then the Werewolf Confessions. Both of those are very, very, mind-opening, mind-blowing, whatever, because I just gave the information out there, but there's a lot more and updates that need to be, done. Very much like when I was doing the research of the Hernandez Ranch, I was just scratching the surface at that time. I had no idea. And I was actually talking to Jerry, the guy, we call him Jerry, and I was talking to him a few months ago. I guess a few months ago would have been last year, like in November. And he was just like, Happy Thanksgiving or something. And I messaged him back, and then we started kind of talking a little bit. And he's like, you didn't realize that you had a tiger by the tail at that time, back in 2000, whatever it was, 16 or whatever. And I told him, I said, no, I didn't. And it's been a long time. It's been years now, almost 10 years since I first stumbled upon that. And I say stumbled upon because I really kind of did. I didn't. But there again, I don't believe in coincidences. So meeting him was pivotal and it was fateful. And he had a couple of encounters, but it was nothing like what he, when I introduced me to his uncles and his brothers, and having interviewed all these people and then all of us and meeting them and getting to know them and going out to their ranch. It's some scary stuff. I mean, it's really scary. You're there and you hear these creatures or whatever they are. You hear them. You can hear them right there in the woods. They're right there. You can hear it.
Right.
And it's daytime. And I'm like, I'm not going to be here at night. They wanted me to stay at night and whatever, and his uncle. And I said, there's no way in hell I'm going to stay out here at night. I don't give a crap. People say I'm scared or whatever. I don't care. Yeah, good. Say it, because I am. I'm not going to be here because I don't know what that is. Now I have a little better understanding of it, but we still don't know each and every type of these creatures.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, like, when I was talking to Charles in particular, he said that Joel in particular, he said that there were these wolf, werewolves that they changed because you would know them as werewolves. They have another name for it. He's like, but he goes, there are these other creatures and he was real quick to point out too. He goes, I think they come from the inner earth. When he said that, it was like, I was just like I still get excited when I hear it, because I jumped up out of my chair. I was like, you're kidding me. I said, okay, so there is another thing. He goes, yes, I've seen them. I don't know what they are. We don't know exactly what they are, but he thinks that was the precursor form of the werewolf. Now, two different things, right? But still, they're still werewolves, but he doesn't know what kind. He knows that they're capable of shape-shifting. So the question I had for him, and I asked him this a couple months ago, and I said, hey, are these creatures the ones that come from the inner? Because I had not asked him this. And he said, I said, do they when they come up out of the ground, and they're whatever, are they shapeshifters? He goes, absolutely. He said, they can all change shape, but that is their main shape. So I asked him about the Levant. Now here's the puzzle piece here. And I said, have you heard of the legend of, Ibn Said, whatever, the king of the Hermitid kingdom, the emperor, whatever. And he says, yeah, I know what you're talking about, the Adharit. I said, yeah. He goes, is that what they are? He goes, I don't know. So we started talking about Bahamut. Now, Bahamut's this giant well in the Middle East that's where these creatures have been seen to come up out of. And that could be one of the sources, but there's so many different places like that. There's Baalbek in Lebanon. That's another one where they see these flying vampiric looking creatures. And they are vampiric because they will assault their livestock and exsanguinate them. See, one of the problems, though, there's people that have a stranglehold on our media, folks.
Right.
So what is happening over there in the Middle East, we don't know. Because remember, they're all terrorists, so we can't talk, we can't get information from them. Another problem is the Eastern European bloc is not really receptive to America. So the media here, and there is a demarcation line, and it is the former Iron Curtain. If you look, and you could just see what's former communism, like that part of the world doesn't really want anything to do with us. They don't. And they say, well, the Russians poisoned their mind against us, blah, blah, blah. They've been out from underneath the Russian boot heel for a long time, and they still don't want anything to do with us. And it doesn't help when Putin says the West is run by vampires.
You know,
literally, and drink blood. I mean, he's basically saying that. And he says, and their bellies are full of human flesh, and the vampire ball is coming to an end. And then you got Rosie O'Donnell and 900 other people coming out and saying, they're vampires, they're vampires. You know, and you got Alex Jones, who I've known for 30 years, and he's over there like, they're vampires ruling the world. And everybody's just like, okay, calm down, take a pill. You know, and Joe Rogan's over there like, what is going on here? You know, I have so many mutuals with those guys, not even funny. I'm telling you, though, I told them, I said, look, just because they're jumping up and down and saying it, or Joe's smoking a spliff, or Rosie O'Donnell, Roseanne Barr is no longer working in Hollywood, doesn't mean that they're not all correct. You know, because even though you may not like these people, broken clocks, right?
Yeah.
They're right twice a day. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. You have people jumping up and down screaming that, hey, this is happening. Now, over 100,000 adults a year go missing in this country, right? Now, way more go missing. Let me rephrase that. They're never found. They're gone without a trace. Over 100,000. They're never found. Look it up. And we have, 600,000 children that go missing. Now, a lot of those are found, but a lot of them aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And these people that have control over here, they literally are making this stuff happen. And they're using these cartels. And I'm not even talking about the cocaine sniffing, cocaine selling, whatever people. They're using these. I'm going to say this. They're like vampire cartels. I'm not even joking. And they use blood and blood magic and blood rituals to do what they do. And they keep people, they blind you.
Right.
And even when you're talking about this, sometimes I'll lose my train of thought. It's like I'm being attacked right now. I can feel it. They're trying to, it's like that you're trying to disseminate this information. Something comes and tries to stop you. I always say I do my best thinking when I'm in the gym, because that energy, you're in the gym, and I don't care about the gym culture. I just want to go in there and work out. And then like people will come and try to talk to me. I'll talk to them if I'm friends with them, whatever, and catch my breath, whatever. But then I get back to what I'm doing, because and I need to think and focus, And so that is where I'm supposed to be, because that is where they can't touch you. They can't find your mind, so to speak.
Yeah.
And they want to encapsulate you. That's what they do. And so if they can shut you down, they will. And it takes somebody to be very strong, mind, body, and spirit to be able to do this. And I'm telling you, this is the absolute truth. I'm not joking. This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. But if you're going to get involved in this and you're going to really do it right and go down the rabbit hole that I've gone down, you need to be very, very prepared. And when we talk about the Christ shield, you really do need that, because you're dealing with, as Jesus said, principalities in high places. And not only that, but you're dealing with the spirit world. And these people move in and out of the spirit world like it's nothing to them. That's like, you go and you take a drink of your coffee. That's what they do. They can sidestep into this spirit world, and they're there, and they're in the shadows. And I've had people, tell me that they've seen things step out of a shadow, was looking at, they could have been there all day. Yeah.
Right.
Because the Jinn do hide in the shadows. That's where they're from. And what people don't understand, though, is whenever you take this covenant with these beings, you're entering into this agreement. This other can take over at any time. Mm-hmm. And if that other, if they want to, get rid of you, they don't have to assassinate you. You know what they can do to you? That other can make you kill someone in front of a bunch of people. They can make you. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was going to ask you. No, and I apologize. Josh, one thing I love about you when you're on the show, you've been on a handful of times. You get on this roll and you disseminate such great information, and I have all these questions, and I'm like, man, I hate to interrupt the guy. He's on a roll. So I'm trying to remember things, and just really briefly, and this is all related. You mentioned that word power. Mm-hmm. And people might think I'm a little crazy. I'd like your take on this, because I think it leads to something much greater. I think that power is more addictive than cocaine, heroin.
It is.
Any of these drugs, because once you get a taste of power, you feed off of it. And I think that's what happens in the world and society today. We're talking about secret societies. We haven't talked on the Illuminati or the New World Order. These people are dead fast and have one agenda, and that's just to control.
Control.
and be in charge of everything. So I think power, in some instances, might be a benefit for the modest individual, but when it gets in the hands of these oligarchies and these trillionaires, people that we don't even know, that are pushing the strings in the world, and maybe they are behind all of these things we talk about today. Maybe they're the reason why we have the dogman, the werewolf, these paranormal
Absolutely.
beings.
You know, one of the things that I've thought about too, like, so on that subject, you know, how do I start this? This is a big piece to bite. Like, and it's another saying. It's like those who crave power aren't fit to wield it. You know, absolutely not. If it's something that you're craving and you're looking for, you don't need to be in charge. If you really think that you can do things and you're there to help people and do what's right, that's one thing. But a lot of times the people the least competent people that should be running anything end up, it's like the inmates running the asylum. And what they don't realize is they're imprisoning all of us, not for themselves, but for these ultra terrestrials.
Right.
It's all leading up to this power grab. But the system is going to be broken. It's going to be broken. And it is the system of the beast. And it is Bible prophecy too. And I'm telling you, it's all going to come to pass. But it's not the way people think it is, because the church took everything out and they changed it all around. And so what people don't see is that it's going to be a more gradual ascension or descension, depending on who you are and your energy, your vibration. And you're going to end up there and you're going to be like, whoa, how did this happen? Well, go back and take a look at your life. I do a lot of research into NDEs, near-death experiences, and OBEs, out-of-body experiences, and people that see what I've seen, you know, going into the other realms and seeing it. I put an article up on my Facebook, and I was going to shout out to Christopher Jordan because he's always posting these science articles and stuff. And even though we don't totally see eye to eye on the politics, but he's very astute and very he's very analytical guy. I like talking to him about science. He's my science guy, you know. And so science now is taking us in this direction that our whole universe is actually in a black hole within another universe. Very interesting, considering that there are multiple universes. Because people say, well, God is the master of all I said, he's the master of the multiverse. Right. Because this is a multiverse, folks. And I'm telling you, some of these people are managing to fly too close to the sun. Look up Icarus if you don't know what that means. And what they're doing is they're like little children. You wouldn't give a toddler a handgun and say, hey, go out and pop a cap in the, whatever. It's just not something to do. But that's the equivalent of what's happening. You have people who are in charge of the ability to blow up the entire world. And they're lunatics. They're absolutely lunatics. And if they don't get the power that they want, one group in particular, I know, I'm not going to mention it, but they will absolutely blow up the entire planet if they don't get what they want. And they have the ability to do it. And that's why Kennedy was assassinated. We could go down that road one day, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. Somebody mentioned Henry Kissinger earlier, and I'm like, yeah, the good old Henry's looking up at us right now. Like, there's no doubt in my mind. But he was one of them, and so is Daddy Bush. And it'll come around to the Clintons too, the Bushes and the Clintons, and all these other people who've played ball with these demons. They know, and calling them demons doesn't even do it justice, folks. These aren't demons. Demons are something. Let me explain to you what a demon is. A demon is the offspring of the fallen. These are like the children, right? These are the kids. Now, they can be really bad.
Gods or whatever.
Yeah, they can be really bad, though. I mean, in particular, there's one that was like when Beelzebub was taken before Solomon or Suleiman, whatever, and he says, what do you do? Who are you? He described himself and what he did and all this, and he says, but I have a son who haunts the Black Sea, and he's really bad. Like he described his child as like this horrible being that was like, a terror, and he goes, and he's killed many of your people, on the Black Sea and whatever. And so he's like, well, bring him to me. I want him. And he goes, I have no power over him. He's my own child. I can't control him. So some of them do get really bad. Like they can have some children that are worse, but you go down like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 generation, whatever, the power is not there. A guy walking around saging his house and these things are throwing chairs around or breaking something. That's not an archon, dude. An archon will burn your house down, destroy your life, and kill everyone you know in different ways.
Yeah.
That's what an archon will do. This is not about that. These people, they're talking about, I'm casting out demons. So you can cast out a demon, but you're going to need something really powerful to cast out an archon. And there's a passage where when Moses' body was in dispute, and of course, Saint Michael, well, they call him Saint Michael, but he was actually an archangel. And he didn't tell Lucifer, or Satan, it was Satan, but a lot of theologians say that it was Lucifer. He didn't tell him, I rebuke you. He says, may the Lord God rebuke you. And people have asked the question, why didn't he rebuke him himself? Because he didn't have that authority.
Right.
Lucifer was a very powerful angel who outranked him at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael was just like, hey man, I'm doing what the Lord has asked me to do. This is my job and you're impeding it. Of course, this could just be a story. We don't know exactly how this, but it gives a contrast to show you like how powerful these archons can be and how powerful they really are. People that I've had people tell me silly things like, yeah, I fought Lucifer and I kicked him out of my house. And all so Lucifer was nowhere near your house. Believe me. Okay. Because there are more important things to do in this universe than even just play around, there's no way. Now you may have fought a devil. There may have been something that was one of his minions or offspring, but you're not fighting him. And in fact, at the time of Suleiman, the most powerful entity among the jinn was named Asmodeus. It wasn't actually Lucifer.
Right.
Now, there's the theory behind that too, that he got imprisoned in the Black Cube, and that's how Asmodeus, with the help of his buddy Astaroth, were able to trick him. They got him into a labyrinth, and they tricked him. Now, that is a whole nother weird subset of stuff, and I could give you all kinds of information about that, but that's just a whole nother. And these angels, they know that, because it says this in the hadith, and basically that the jinn, they can fly up to the 5th level, right? They can't go beyond that. We don't think they can, because the 6th level is the intermediary level of heaven. It's kind of like that, you're leaving the earth, we know that they go to the 5th and 6th, almost to the 6th level to spy, and that they try to listen to the words of the angels. No. So the angels have to be careful when they're in that lower level of heaven, because they're being spied upon. Now, if these beings are powerful enough to spy undetected upon angels, what do you think they're going to do to you? I mean, that's what I tell people. I say, you don't realize what you're dealing with. The only thing you can do is fall on your knees and ask Christ to protect you, because you have no other recourse. We are literally walking around. Imagine if you were in the ocean, and I asked somebody that I was interviewing one time, and I told her, I said, you wouldn't just go swimming around in the ocean and just, oh, look, there's a great white, there's an orca, and not be afraid. I mean, you see it, right? I said, but imagine all the things you can't see. I said, now you walk out of your house every day and you go do your mundane life, whatever. You're surrounded by sharks constantly, and they're hungry, and they want your soul. They want your energy. Believe me, they don't want to just take you to hell just to go burn with them. That's a silly concept. They want the human soul because it's something that they can gain power from. Energy. You're an energy, ball of energy. That's what you are. And if they can enslave you, they can use you as a battery, And people don't understand this. Somebody says Islam is not compatible with Christianity. Well, if you like Ike, I probably don't like you. So I can tell you that right now. They're not the same. No, they're not. And I'm thinking this person probably needs to be removed, because it's probably Ike, if you know who I'm talking about.
Pancho George. It's not.
Okay. Are you sure?
I'm positive.
It's not him. Okay. All right, George, because there's a guy that goes by that nickname that we don't, we gave him a nickname, but I don't want to bring him up. But that he likes to go into people's things and heckle and do stuff. Okay. Sorry, George. He says, I can burn in the garage, don't need to go nowhere. Okay. Anyways. bottom line is this, these beings or whatever, they can take you down to like the abyss. They don't have to take you to hell, and they're not in hell. That's the thing. And when people go to these what I call intermediate zones, that's where you're at, where they suffer and they're being tortured, but the demons are still very much in charge. Let's be specific here. That is not hell. That is a burning purgatory. I'm not even joking. There's a different thing. Hell is actually the final destination, where it's the lake of fire, where you will end up the ultimate ending, and you will be completely, destroyed along with all these demons and archons and everything else during the final push. Okay. And then it even talks about in multiple books that God's going to do away with hell altogether. It's going to be destroyed because it has no more use. It will be done. And now all of this is something that can be, the reason, let me address this guy. The reason they made me nervous, and I'm sorry, George, it had nothing to do with you. I'm just on edge because of people that troll me constantly. It's not about you. You're not making me nervous at all. I thought you were somebody else. Now that I know you're not, I don't care. So forgive me. So anyways, back to what I was saying, that's what the final destination is, right? Now, when you're these beings, these werewolf, demon, vampire, whatever, worshiping weirdos, what they do this, they don't look at hell as like, I'm going to go there, because they believe this. This is the truth, folks. They really believe that their war with God will be successful and that they're going to win. Because they've said things like, look around. Eve told me something very interesting. She says, look around on the planet and look at how much evil there is here. And so that gives them the hope that the evil will eventually just overcome, and the good, the light will be snuffed out, and there won't be. And they're thinking this is going to become like a no-go zone for normal people, right? This is going to become gangsters' paradise to them. And so that's what they're looking forward to. No law, no order. But you remember when we talked about the Jinn King that actually imprisoned the demons, right?
Yeah.
What you're dealing with, and when I deep dived into that, and the 7 towers of hell, or the 7 towers of Satan, which is another whatever, I found that those are all prisons. And they were all created by these Jinn kings to imprison more evil demons. So you have what is essentially lawful evil correcting and imprisoning chaotic evil. So those that are chaotic and don't want to conform, those evil entities have their own, it's like, think of it in terms of like Star Wars. There's an analogy, right? You had Jabba the Hutt, who was like this gangster, criminal, whatever. And he was bad, but he lived out in this area. And the Empire, who was the overall really bad ones, they didn't really mess with him. They didn't mess with him because he had a use, right? So they didn't really care that he was doing bad and he was, whatever. And the Empire was not really interested in solving the problem of doing wrongdoing. They were interested in what? Control. So as long as Jabba the Hutt was selling drugs or whatever he was doing to these ne'er-do-wells, they didn't care. They didn't give a crap. They didn't go, because at any time the Empire could have descended upon him and knocked him out and been done with him. And even Vader says, he tells Boba Fett, he's like, you can take Solo to Jabba the Hutt, after I have Skywalker,
Jabba the Hutt was the modern day Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars.
Well, he knew that he was this bad gangster out there on the Outer Rim, but he didn't give a crap. Vader was like, I don't care about this criminal. And in truth, they didn't care to stop the criminals. They only stopped the criminals to make a show like they cared about the collective overall health of the Empire, which they really didn't. They were just power, and they were looking to knock out all the good guys. And so that was their thing, And so when you start looking at this situation here, it's very much the same situation. Like you have these evil overall bad guys that are in control, and they don't really care about all these other factions and lesser whatever, because as long as they have control, they're not going to really do anything to these bad guys, because our government, starting with the CIA, if they really wanted to, they could put a stop to a lot of shit, and they don't.
Absolutely.
You know why? Because they nurture it and foster it. Because if you're worried about those bad guys, you're not worried about the other bad guys, which is so you're focused on those people. And every now and then they'll throw you a bone and they'll take a child predator, make an example of them, or a murderer, make an example of them, or whatever. Look at what's happening now with Diddy. It's like, yeah, he's the big bad now because he's gotten caught up, whatever, because he was just going too far. And so they're out there taking down these bad guys, but they're really not. It's just an illusion,
Yeah.
because they're on that same wavelength, they're on that same vibration, and they really don't care. Now, there's got to be a reason why they took him down. Maybe because he was causing too many problems and it was just getting too ridiculous, or they just needed somebody to throw out there and say, let's just take somebody down, and or he had some information that on them that they didn't want him having.
Or take him down and maybe the dominoes will fall. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they did it themselves rather than let him go too far and make a deal with the wrong people, and then something comes out. That's the thing. Keep him quiet, whatever. And I think a lot of these people really, truly, they don't want anything bad to happen to the bad people. That's why bad people keep getting away with what they do. They use, and somebody just says Diddy was a CIA asset. Exactly, he very much could have been. And so you have this whole intricate web, but remember, at any given time, if you're in that web, they can stab you in the back, because that's their calling card, is to backstab. They're back.
There's no loyalty, there's no trust. No, not at all.
No loyalty.
It's all about information.
Yeah, and I just said it started with Weinstein, Epstein. Yeah, it did. So yeah, good one there, George. George knows. So Weinstein, Epstein, yeah, but look what happened. Epstein's all of a sudden, he decides to kill himself, whatever. I mean, he may have. There are evil people when they get caught, rather than turning their self over and giving away their secrets, they just off themselves, and those people are sociopaths. Think of what's his face from Fox Hollow Farms. What's the serial killer's name? Baumeister.
Baumeister, yep.
Herb Baumeister, rather than taking, he could have solved. I think he was the interstate killer too. And I think he could have solved probably 100 murders if he really wanted to. I think his body count was up there with Chikatilo and Lucas and Henry Lee Lucas. And I think he killed himself because I thought he said I'm no George. I thought he was George. I'm sorry.
George.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I think his body count was much higher. But rather than do that, what does he do? He goes to Toronto, sits on the bench, and shoots himself. Because he'd rather do that than be a decent person and just say, look, I killed all these people. And now there's this horrible haunting there at his complex, that people, and to this day, they're still finding DNA from different bone fragments. I think the body count's up to 60 something now, just on his farm alone. So, and if he was the interstate killer, which that all stopped once he died, right? He was doing that too. And he killed many, many people. And it's interesting. Here's another really interesting thing. There was a guy, and this is kind of off the beaten path, but Jeffrey Dahmer once was taken hostage by a guy. He was tortured, and the guy was taking knives and was going to kill him. And Dahmer talked him into letting him go. Said, "Look, I won't tell anybody. I won't do." And this guy was obviously a serial killer himself. And so when Dahmer was in prison, they wanted information. They were like, if he knew anybody, because he had come across so many different people, and they were using him to try to get, they were trying to get into his mind, and he had supposedly turned himself over to Christ. And Gacy was actually executed while Dahmer was in prison. So Dahmer, he was like, he's like, when I die, I don't want to end up like that. He goes, I know I'm sick. I did these things, and he admitted it. But he tried to give them a description of the man that nearly killed him, because he was nearly killed himself. It's a sick world. I mean, it's crazy. And some people have said, hey, that was Herb Baumeister because of the description. Now, Baumeister didn't kill people with knives, but I think maybe if he had him in a hotel room and he was probably just scaring him, because one of the survivors said that that's what he was doing. He was doing all this stuff to scare him, and then he choked him, But that was also Gacy's thing too, to scare people, and then he would choke them, And these were all homosexual thrill killers. That's what they were. And so they would know each other by their works. They're like predators. They know each other, and I think that is a lot like these beings. They know each other because one of these people that's doing this stuff, they can cloak themselves pretty well within the realm of normalcy. And in fact, all of them were encouraged to get normal jobs, these vampire werewolf people, and act like a normal person. And they would have a wife. They would have children that had no clue what they were out there doing, and it was like, hey, I got a call. I got to run to the office. It's nighttime. I got to go do it. And they would go off and kill someone. Really, truly, this is what they were doing. They were evil. They would have somebody there at the temple that they had taken. Zorch. There you go, Zorch. Oh, sorry about that. Oh, is that Pancho Zorch?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, George. Sorry, man. Totally on edge. I didn't even. Sorry about that, Pancho Zorch. Yeah. I've known you forever. Sorry about that. So anyway, they would have somebody there ready to go, and they would go up there and they would do this, and then they would go home, and they would not. And these people would eat. But they're not big eaters. They would eat, but that's not what their nourishment was. Their nourishment was blood, and it had to be because that's what the other demanded. And depending on the other that you got, there were some that were bloodthirsty and others that wanted human flesh. And this is what these people would say that that this is what they were doing. They admitted, they were like, look, we taking in the consuming of human blood, and it was something that they had to do because if they didn't do it periodically, then this other would become an agitator and it would cause a lot of problems for them. So that is a weird thing that it's so. And I think when there's evil too, I think serial killers have the same thing, and I think they have this passenger, like Dexter. If you ever watch Dexter, he talks about the dark passenger. That is the other on him that gives him that lust for blood and to kill. And he's committing a sacrifice every time he stabs one of these people in the chest. Is what he's doing. And look at how many times these serial killers nearly get caught, but then they don't. Something weird always happens.
Yes.
Palmer in particular, he was pulled over by a state trooper in Ohio, and the guy he sees a bag.
He doesn't even
with a body. And he just says, what do you got there? He goes, oh, I'm taking out the trash, and he's just like, oh, okay, well, nothing weird about just having a big bag of trash in your back seat of your car. Well, see ya. You can't tell me that wasn't the other watching out for me.
No, absolutely. And another thing is a lot of these serial killers, how many times have they absolutely tried to get busted? Because they have these big egos where they kind of want people, they want to, you know what I'm saying? They leave. I think first of all, when they start out, they do not. But then when they see their names in the headlines and they're getting all this publicity, and they start leaving clues. And sometimes I think they're so wacky that they kind of want to get caught, but not really, if that makes any sense.
They want people to know, but they don't want to be the punished for it. They want the
right. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier in a different subset of it. Power. These serial killers get that power adrenaline rush.
And a lot of them are former law enforcement or like we're almost certain now that the Zodiac killer was a police officer from San Francisco. That's the prevailing theme at this point. Look at what happened to Ted Bundy very quickly. There was this couple that went up into the hills, in California, or Oregon or California, I can't remember which. And they stepped on something soft and it spooked them. So they turned and they left. And it was like they and it was a story that Ted Bundy told. He said he was dragging this girl's body. And these people, I think it was in Utah, actually. He was dragging this girl's body up in the hills. And there was on this little mountain path, and they stepped on something, this couple, and it spooked them, and so they booked it. But they were just one breath away, if they would have just paid attention to what they had stepped on, to uncovering what Bundy had done. And Ted Bundy, by his own admission, says that the guy looked pretty like a big, strong guy. He might have overpowered him. I was like, oh, crap, I might get caught. This guy looks like somebody I might not be able to whip his ass, So who knows what could have happened? That could have ended his reign of terror, and all those women that died down in Florida and Tallahassee wouldn't have been killed, you know.
Right.
At Florida State or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at this, you know, these cases, I mean, you're really starting to you know, and somebody said something about the Draco. That's a good point, because the Draco are a very, very vicious species of reptilian. I can talk about that for a second. The Vril. The Vril are actually, what they are is they were the Draco that got vampirized. I'm not even kidding, folks. There are Dracos, literally Draco reptilians, that actually were vampirized, and I think that was when this woman was telling us about this vampire that was trapped there in that cube, and they were telling her, like, in the way that they were like a species, and if they are released, you know, if they let them go, that they'll go. And so this being, I guess, the way that she thought was that these aliens were studying it to try to figure it out, because they needed to try to cure whatever it is that they're spreading. And they spread this virus, which is what I think it is, but it's not really a virus in the way we think of it as a virus. It's kind of like, and somebody told me about this. I only watched 1.5 episodes. I never got to do more, but I probably need to, because a lot of it's soft disclosure, and it was called The Strain. But like I said, I only got through an episode and a half, but I should go back and try to finish it, but I don't want it to taint what I'm studying.
Yeah.
And Tony just said it is a disease. Yeah, because Tony and me have done a lot of deep diving on this. We've studied it, and Anthony too, since all of this hit. And but Tony in particular. But one of the things that me and Tony were talking about the other day, and of course, if you don't know, Tony's one of my nephews and my godson, and one of the co-hosts, but on my show. But we were talking about this and some of these cases that they're. It's really weird that even these extraterrestrials or ultra terrestrials are having issues with this, because the people that this thing can infect, it's not just humans, because there is a common DNA. There's a commonality within DNA throughout the entire universe, and it's intergalactic. I'm not even joking. We are smaller versions of the Anunnaki. And I don't care what anybody says, the Watchers, the Anunnaki, whatever you want to call them, that's what we are. And we have their DNA, but we have less strands. But they can be infected with vampirism too. It just takes more of it. And one of the things that at the Temple of Shade, this is very interesting, folks. There were these big, giant, tall beings that they called the Elders. And now this is different. The Elders were not the same as the Immortals. Those are two different things. I learned that. I thought they were the same thing. So I was on the show, and I get this message, and they were like, hey, you're talking about two different things. This is not the same. So I had to go back and re-interview one of these people. And she was like, look, this is, and I get it, you made a mistake, but they're two different things. Samantha had told me. And Samantha was very adamant to say that, because she was a high priestess, and she dealt with the Immortals. The Immortals were the actual vampires themselves. And when you commune with them, they weren't giants either. They were not these, the Elders. There were Elders that were like these ancient ones that were whatever. And then they had these ones that were like giants. Now, these, I would assume, were like a Nephilim that had been vampirized. Now, remember, Solomon ended up with this ring. And I'm trying to bring it all together. I'm not just rambling. So this ring was given to him by God because of a vampiric demon that was draining the blood and life essence of his manservant's, of his favorite manservant's son, right? So it was like his butler's son was being killed. And he told Solomon how it was happening, that this vampire was drinking his blood from his foot and his leg.
Wow. And
so Ornius got caught. And so Solomon, he had guards posted up, and they see this shadow go in, and Solomon goes in there, and he confronts him with the ring. And this vampire is powerless. He can't do anything. And he says, if you don't go and get me the others like you, So there is this sort of schism or rift between some of the demons. There's like a clan of them who don't like the vampires. They don't like them for one main reason. This particular demon or jinn they don't like humans, and they don't like that they use humans. And because vampires are always having to go and deal with humans, they get caught. And so all these demons ended up thrown in the clink because of a vampire's stupid mistake.
Wow.
So there is a schism there. There is a little bit of a even demons themselves don't really like the vampires. It's really weird. And they were telling me this. And so I was reading this and I was thinking, this makes sense. There is like a schism there. And like I said, that is their Achilles heel. They can't get along. They're always going to have problems with one another. And that is our ability to overcome them because we stick together because we're loyal. One thing they don't have is loyalty. They don't love. There is no love. And when you don't have love, like I love you guys. I'm loyal. We're friends. We talk all the time. We're close. You called me up and said, I need something. I'm going to drive to Missouri to try to help you. Now, Rob, you're too far. You're Michigan, but I would go to. I'm joking.
Yeah,
I would get in the truck and or car, whatever, and I would drive. And I would. My hand to the Bible, I would. But there's some of these people, they don't love. There is no love, and they imitate their demonic masters because they have no love. The loyalty is only bought, which is temporary. It's a mercenary thing, or it's fear. They only are controlled by fear. And so I've had people tell me, well, I practice this sorcery and that sorcery, and I've cast out demons. And I'm like, yeah, because you're using a bigger, meaner demon to do it. It's a bully. What do you think is going to happen when that demon wants what it wants from you? Yeah,
Right.
It just kicked out the resident demon, and now you have something much worse, which is pretty much inevitably what always happens.
Right.
These beings end up like being in trouble with they need whatever it is that you're going to give them, because a lot of times they're sent there by their boss because they have a boss that they work for, and so they're like, look, if you don't, they'll shake you down. Like, if you don't give me what I want,
Right.
and sometimes the price is too heavy, they'll be like, what do you want then? What do you want from me? They're like, I want a family member.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they're like, I can't do that. Well, you better pick somebody or we'll do it for you.
Right.
And they'll target your children because they know that's probably where your love is. And they'll be like, you love these beings, don't you? And like the skinwalkers will tell you, they'll say, loving is losing. I'm not even joking. I had a skinwalker. I interviewed him. I interviewed this guy. I haven't released it yet, but this guy, I'm telling you, he says, loving is losing. Is if you love somebody, you will lose, because that is the key. And I was like, well, how did you do it? He claims he's a skinwalker, right? And I said, how did you do it? He says, I didn't love. I gave up somebody that I cared about that was useful to me, but I didn't love them. And he's like, once you're able to do that, he goes, and once you're able to give away something precious that you
It doesn't matter.
cling to, that doesn't matter to you, it's like then you're free. And that's the way he described it. At least he thought he was. But there again, he's involved in a coven, but it's on the reservation. It's the same thing these people are doing, just in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these really sick, weird, and perverted dynamics. And I say perverted in many ways because it's abnormal. It's not of the normal realm. We can't fathom this. It's something you can't even understand. It's like you don't know what it is, like these people, like these beings or whatever, because it's not in the day-to-day life that you're going to live. You're not even going to understand this. It's like, how can you fathom it? You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
Any more questions?
Let's look here.
Yeah, you can go through that really quickly. I do want to pick Josh's brain with one other thing. Josh, how much longer do you have? I know Krista might want to bail in a little bit.
I left my schedule open for you guys, so
thank you. All right, well, Krista, you can get the questions. I
haven't been starring questions because I know Josh.
Okay,
We
well,
don't really have a lot of time for questions, so
I got to do something. Yeah, I know. No, this has been awesome, fantastic, great show. I got to do something for mommy once again, right quick, and then I'll be ready with something. So I'll be right back. Okay.
Yep.
2 minutes. All right, bye.
So yeah. Anyway, we appreciate everybody being here, and I'll go through and thank everybody real quick for BMR. Keith, thank you. T-Bone, Kelly Lewis, Midnight Smoker, Eddie, Jen, and the vlogs, and then some. Thank you. Kelly Sandiford, thank you. Alan Garcia, Joe DePops, another Alan Garcia, Eddie, Jen, and the vlogs again. Thank you. Mary Angel Magdalene, appreciate it. Diane Boss, John Phoenix, Chris Kramer, and that's it. Thank you very much. We appreciate all that. We don't expect it, but it's definitely goes to good use.
Mhm.
And real quick, while I'm got everybody here, before BMR comes back, we have an event coming up April 12th, and it is at Arcadia Valley in Missouri. And if anybody is interested in coming to it, Haunted Souls, our paranormal team, put out a code. If anybody's in the area and they want to come to it, it gives them 15% off tickets. So yeah, if anybody's interested. So I don't know that I'm going to be there, but Brandy will probably be there. So
that's in April.
Yeah, that's in Missouri. Yes.
Missouri.
Yeah, 12th. Mm-hmm.
When is you guys' conference? The big conference you guys are doing?
That is September 19th and 20th.
That's going to be an awesome awesome show.
Yep. I'm hoping you guys can make it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you talking to me or talking to
You?
Yeah,
I'm
you
not going to be able to do that.
Well, you never know. We still got 6 months, 7 months.
Yep.
You never. Well, you're of course welcome. You and your entire
Yeah.
family.
Yeah, I just don't want to, because there's people that I don't want them following me up there to mess around and that.
Hey,
I don't want it to distract from what you guys are doing, because it could. That's the thing. I don't.
Well, here's the thing. Our conference that we're doing, it's about unity and showing the community that we all stand behind each other, and
Absolutely.
So they can leave their attitudes at the door and come and learn and have fun. That's the way we look at it. So
yeah, it's just there's divisiveness in the community, and and if I say this with all sincerity, if I hadn't tried to bring the community together, I probably wouldn't have had all this crap that's happened to me. But I think it's important. I think that at some point in your life, you have to make a stand, folks. Everybody's got to make a choice.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to preach to you. Last night we did the call-in show, and we had a bunch of people in there, and people were telling stories, and then I ended up, talking about Christ, and we prayed, the salvation prayer, and that was not planned. I just felt the Spirit move me to do it, and when the Spirit convicts you, you got to do what you got to do. And I don't do it as a show like, oh, look at me, I'm holy. Dude, I have lived a very sinful life, and I make no bones about it. I don't deny it. In fact, Chris Garitano was like, I told him a little bit, and he was like, having talked to Starscream at the conference and, getting to know a few of us, he was like, dude, we should do a documentary about the stuff that you've done and that, I was like, let me see what the statutes of limitations are. Some of this stuff, but I was like, jokingly, but I don't want to glorify that. I don't want to glorify that lifestyle. And I've strived really hard to keep my nephews, who I raised 3 of them, to not, I just don't follow that path. And one of them is just determined, and I'm just pray for him, please. I just want him out of that. He's downtown running around with all that riffraff, and I don't. Yeah. It hurts my heart. I don't talk about it much, but I just wish that he wouldn't be, he wants to be like me and his dad. And it just, we tell him, look, man, we're lucky to be alive. We're not lucky. It was God.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just know that you do have an open invitation for you and your family to come to our conference.
Yeah. And Ike had said something else here. Ike's a big part of the show tonight, but he said something about Barton Nunley, deal. Yeah, it was before that though. George, it was before that, and I still am convinced that they tricked him, but that's when somebody has been turned, and not to talk ill of anybody, I'm not. The guy's ill right now, and I want people to pray for him. He was my friend. He was my closest friend in this field, and it was a big victory to take him and turn him against me. And it was lies, treachery, and that tore my guts out. And I've said it before. All he has to do is pick up the phone and talk to me.
Well, I like Ike. Pancho Zorch says, when you were talking about the conference, he said, "Josh, got your back."
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I thought he was somebody else, but
we all know
Pancho is actually coming to the conference. He got tickets, so yeah. But what? Speaking of Barton, too, real quick for people who come on late, Bart is sick right now, and definitely say some prayers, for him and Letitia both. So we'd appreciate everybody doing that. So, yeah. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any questions? Yeah.
And again, my sentiments too. Love you, Josh, your family. Always welcome on my show, to my house, wherever you want. And speaking of my house, not to get personal, my mom is so weird. As I said earlier, I brought her in. She, blah blah blah. She wanted to go to the drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's 11 o'clock here. Not too
Yeah.
late. Just wait till later or in the morning, please. She had her
Yeah.
keys in her hand, ready to go. Gotta watch her. But she does have her faculties. She could probably do it. But at nighttime, I just rather have her go during
Yeah.
the,
I mean, it's definitely,
you
know, and when you get older, one of the things, and I've learned too about these people, they prey on children and elderly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they do. Absolutely they do. And that's a big thing I worry about.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching your show last night, Josh, and it's something we touched on a little bit earlier today, and I liked your takes. So I got to run this by you, and people that follow me have heard this before. Krista has. I don't know that you have, and I want your take on this.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the shadow people, the dark people, because I experienced that, and I want you to kind of listen to this and give me your thoughts, because I don't really have answers really to this day.
Mhm.
And back when I was in my early 20s, mid 20s, when I got married, and my wife and I, we love going to thrift shops, antique shops. Now, this is I've always had paranormal experiences throughout my life from as early as 5. It all, came to a climax when I saw Bigfoot or whatever it was in 2018. But throughout my life, I'd seen ghosts, I'd seen UFO, this, that, and the other. So I was in my mid 20s, and my wife at the time and we really liked going to the thrift shops, the antique shops. We'd collect all these weird objects. It didn't matter what it was. It could have been a lighthouse, a weird looking witch apparition, a stagecoach. I mean, you name it.
Mm-hmm.
And we started collecting all these things for about the first year and a half of marriage, traveling throughout Michigan and other states. But we put everything in boxes. And in my home, I had this room where you walked in the foyer. There was nothing to do with this foyer. It was a really pretty room with pine wood. And what can we do here? It's kind of empty space when people walk in the front door. So we decided to collect all these objects. So then we went out, bought curio cabinets, 7 or 8 of them we collected and were bought. And finally, after about a year, I pull all these little antiques that we bought from the garage. They were always stored away in the garage. Brought them in the house, and then we set up our foyer area with all these things. It looked really sweet. It was very, very cool. It was a nice talking piece when you had guests come over. Hey, what's this? Wow. We'd sit around, talk about them. No kidding. 2 weeks after we set this up, started getting negative energy. And I say energy now, didn't know what it was back then because I wasn't into these things really. And one night I was in this room in the house, very dark room. When I turned down the shades, the shade darkeners, the entire room would be pitch black. And I happened to be in there fumbling around for something. And out of the darkness of the dark room, this darkness superseded the blackness of the room. And it was this humanoid figure. And it was and I had like kind of vaulted ceilings in here, and it stood from the ground to almost to the ceiling. And it was human. It had a human-like shape, but it was darker than the darkness. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm freaked out about it. And then as the weeks went on, I started seeing shadows out of the corners of my eyes, and I started getting kind of troubled by this. And I never told the wife until one day I just had to. Enough was enough, I said. And I went to the wife. I said, I got to tell you something. You're going to think I'm going crazy. Am I going crazy? I'm wondering. She goes, what? And I explained to her about the dark, shadowy figure and the shadows I'd see out of the corners of my eyes. And I would see shadows out of the corners of my eyes during daytime.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, Rob, I've been experiencing the same things, but did not want to say anything to you. I'm like, you're kidding me. So we sat down. She goes, what in the world's going on here? I said, I don't know. I just don't know. It's just weird. So one day I'm off to work and I come home. It's in the evening time, and there's this woman in our house. And I guess back in the day, I'm not into psychic mediums or all these, ghost investigators. I don't even know if there was a program out on YouTube. I didn't even use YouTube until 2018, to be honest with you. And really, and and I go, who's this? I go, hi, this is so and so. I forgot the name, and she's here to help us. I just looked her up, and I called her, and she's a psychic or a medium or a paranormal investigator or something. I'm like, oh, really? About what? Well, I explained to her about what has been going on, and throughout this entire time, too. By the way, when I say negative energy, her job, she's a very successful salesperson. She was floundering at work. A lot of our friends were getting ill. There was a couple deaths, and I myself at my work I was sucked of energy going into work. So I'm usually pretty peppy, and I just was very lethargic. So this lady, she starts traversing about all of the rooms in the house. We had a pretty sizable house, and then we got to, in fact, she lets her in the side door because the front door was the antiques, right, where we set up. She comes in the side door, goes to the kitchen, a living room, a couple of the bedrooms, a bathroom. Everything's fine until we get to the foyer area, where she says she felt a presence and she felt really cold. She goes, the source of whatever you're experiencing is coming from this room. And then she says, tell me about the story behind these curio cabinets and all of these artifacts, these trinkets. And we said they're things we've collected over the last year and a half, stored them away, and we decided to finally do something with them. She goes, this is the source of what you're experiencing. So I'm pretty skeptical at this time, and I say, how much do we owe you? Write her a check, $50. I don't know. I'm getting rid of this woman. She's freaking me out even further. So she leaves, but now after leaving, the shadow people we kind of see them. And I said, and my wife's like, man, there's something to what she said. Why don't we get rid of these antiques? So I go, yeah, let's just box them up and put them back in the garage. So we box up all the antiques, everything that we collected over the years, and I put them in the garage. Within a week or two, all of a sudden, I feel my energy is coming back. The wife is doing better at work. Did not experience any of the shadow figures or objects. Life is now good. And we're like, man, there's something to this. Maybe there's something going on with these artifacts. So spring rolls around. I'm doing spring cleaning in the garage. And it was the garage. I didn't really have any good lighting, but all of the antiques I had put in the far right corner, and they're all boxed up, deciding what to do with them during my cleaning. About a half hour into cleaning, and lo and behold, that shadow image appeared on the back wall of the garage, superseding the darkness inside the garage. I mean, it was light, more ambient than it was in the house. And I see this thing again. And I yell out to the wife, Rachel, get your ass out here. She goes, what? What's going on? Comes out. Of course, when she comes out, what I was experiencing is gone. I go, I got to tell you that dang shadow person, or whatever you want to call it, I don't even know what terminology I used way back. I was 26 years old. And I go, it appeared again. I go, and man, it's got to be these objects. She goes, are you sure? She didn't see anything. She hung out in the garage with me for about 10 or 15 minutes. Nothing appeared. Then right before she's ready to go in the house, she's seen it. It showed itself again on the back far side of the garage. She goes, oh my God, that's it. Whatever, get rid of those the antiques. So I grabbed the boxes of all these objects. I had this old Ford pickup truck, put them all in the back of the Ford, and there happened to be a dump not too far from the house, because there was this dump where you could put garbage and stuff. Today, it's now a hill where people ski on, of all things. so I dump all these objects and that's it. And went back to the house and I said, well, I got rid of it and did not have a problem since. So I guess I'm asking you is, and I heard you last night and a little bit today, and what in the hell you think that was? Was that something that I brought an attachment home from all of these antique places? Because I think that we don't know what we're buying when we buy used items, whether it's a garage sale, an antique shop, thrift shop. So I'm guessing, Josh, that I probably collected some things that were possessed or haunted throughout the travels of these objects had throughout their lifetime.
The short answer would be yes. I mean, probably. I mean, I had that in the house we were living in before this one. Well, we were out at the ranch for a few months, but we kind of split time. But we have this house we were living in, and that place. It had some. Did you go to that house, Krista? I don't know if we were living in that house. No.
Nope, just to your studio where
Okay.
you're at now.
Okay. So I don't remember if you came there or not. I know Ann and Ken had been there, and David Weather, his wife, and several other people. But that house had a lot of issues. And what happened was we bought 4 things from these people when they left. Big mistake. I usually don't do that, but they had some very beautiful pieces, and they seemed like normal people, down to earth Southern Baptist people, and they were just like, hey. They really made me angry. I'm going to say that, and because of their behavior, what they did. But they just said, okay, we just want to leave, and we're going to leave this here. You pay us, and we'll. So we paid them for 4 objects. We end up with like 8. I didn't ask for the other pieces of furniture. What is this? I don't want this. And then they left a bunch of other crap that we had to haul off and throw out and stuff like that. And I'm like, what is this? So it really aggravated me. And so we were there for 2 years, and we left. We got out of it by the grace of God, and then we were able to go. We stayed out at this ranch that we were staying there for a few months. But I can't live out at the ranch because it's too far out of town. I have to be in town and close to my studio, and I had to be, I have a job I got to do. And so I run a security business too. And then the front part of this is the security business, and back here is the studio. So I said, I can't, we can't stay, permanently out at the ranch. So it was hell being out there for 4 months until we bought this other house. And this house, there's been a couple little things. I think there's something there, but it's not on that level of what that was. And I think that those objects had something to do with it, because I told my wife she got really attached to this armoire, and I said, this armoire needs to go. And so we took it, and rather than give it to someone or sell it and make it, because we could have sold it. It was a very beautiful cherry wood antique. We would have just made it someone else's problem. So we destroyed it. And what I mean by destroyed, we took sledgehammers and broke it down into pieces and hauled it off. Because I didn't feel comfortable, and there was something really evil attached to that. But that wasn't the only thing there. We had stuff that was already there causing problems. And then we had the artifacts that were there, whatever you want to call them, the antiques. And then we had people that were throwing curses at us. And I know they were, because one of them admitted it. When me and him talked, he said, look, my associates, whatever, they were angry. They threw curses, So it was happening, And we had guests in our house, and we were sitting at the table, and this black shadow thing just walks right across, across our den. And I'm like, what, what is that? You know what I mean? Like, that's just right there, And so the dining room, which we didn't really use as the dining room, because we had this really big kitchen and then this big space where we kept the kitchen table. We didn't really need the dining room. We turned it into the aquarium sitting room. We put some nice, comfortable chairs there, and I could see into there whenever I would be in my study. And I had a really nice study there, and I spent most of my time in the study. I wasn't upstairs very often. There were 4 bedrooms upstairs. I really didn't need to be up there. And so I was like, I don't really need to be upstairs. So I was very rarely upstairs in the loft area, but the guys upstairs, and my brother stayed there for a couple of months, after he had broken his ankle and his foot work. And he was like, dude, you guys would leave and I would hear talking and, arguing and weird stuff happening. And there's nobody there in the house. It's just him. And he stayed out in the loft, and everybody that stayed in that loft seemed to have like weird dreams. My other nephew would come and stay, and he would stay in that loft, and he would have all these like weird things happening. So, it was really, I don't know how to say, like, how do you say it? Like, how do you say, you can't be comfortable in your own home. You're unnerved. And, for years, I'd lived in a house down in South Austin that I've talked about on the show. My brother and me are writing a book about it. And it was a really bad haunting. There was a lot of stuff that went on. It was just like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But that house, luckily we were only there for a couple of years.
Wow.
And there was enough just from that house to write at least several chapters of a book if you wanted to. And so the shadow thing, that was something I would see quite a bit. I'd be in my study. We had a lot of animals. We still do. They're out at the ranch, and then a couple of them, 4 of them are with us at the other house now. But there would be this thing that would move, through like entry, like the foyer and by that sitting room, which was a dining room that became the sitting room. And I would see it, and I'd see the animals. They would all go crazy and try to run into the study because I had these like French door, well, not French door. I guess they're double doors, and then it had these like the little panels, glass panels, and they would come up, and I could see them, and they would just be trying to get in with me, and I would open the door, and they'd all come running in, because something was harassing them, and so they wanted to be there with me. And for the most part, I was doing my work and interviewing people and whatever. And I was okay with that because I felt bad for the little guys. But I knew something was there harassing them. And we kept saying, hey, we got to get out of this place. And eventually we did. But every time we took a piece of furniture out of there, it got less. It got less, like every time.
Yeah.
Well, toward the end there, we didn't. The activity had kind of slowed down quite a bit because we had gotten rid of most everything that was causing the problems, and I think that's where it was attached to that stuff. These shadow entities. I saw Melvin Greathouse. What's up, Tex? How you doing? I saw Melvin Greathouse in here.
Hey.
I viewed him on the show, and Melvin had some really freaky stuff. He lives up there in upstate New York. And he was talking about like shadow entities and all these beings, and that were affecting him throughout his life. And the shadow beings are just, the scary thing about it is you don't know what they are. Now I want to address somebody, Haunted Souls Paranormal. He had a couple of comments here. And I just to make sure you understand, because I'm not trying to convince you of anything, souls. I'm just, or parent, whatever you want to be called. I'm just trying to say, so for people in the audience, if they're not understanding the way he seems to not be understanding, I'll start with the comments back here. He says, shadow people talking about me now. No, that's not him. He says, are we talking about Star Wars right now? And he says, dude puts a lot of stock into Jinn. They're mortal if they even exist. Well, your name on the show here says Haunted Souls Paranormal. And if you are, excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. So he says here, dude puts a lot of stock in the Jinn. No, I put a lot of stock into it because what they are a type of demon, really, for lack of a better term. But it's really a catch-all term that's used around the Levant, as just, like a demon or a being, that it's a being that hides. But they're not demons in the way that we think of in Christianity. A demon is just an evil being. They're all just evil beings. These people, not just the Muslims, but just Arabs in general, and not just the Arabs. There's Kurdish people there. There's all kinds of different people that live there. The Bedouins, they're not necessarily the same thing. And then you have the Berber, which are the native people there. And they are Carthaginian or Phoenician in particular. They're the descendants of the Carthaginian Empire. That's what they are. And so these people have been around for a long time, and they call them that too, because the idea behind what the jinn are predates Islam by thousands of years. So it's not an Islamic thing, although a lot of people do equate it with that because it talks about it in Islam. But then he says, what the F is happening? Are jinn equaling Sith Lords? No. I was using it as an analogy, and he said something about talking about Star Wars. So a good point, though. It was kind of snarky about it, but it's a good point. I was just to clarify that, I was talking about it in an analogous way. I wasn't saying that they are the Sith Lords and Vader. I was using that as an example of evil working with evil and not caring, and only to show a contrast between chaotic evil and lawful evil. Like this lawful evil is in they have their own laws, right? That's the difference. That's why I had, and yes, Ona Pedigo says I had a haunted key. Yes, and we now don't know where it's at again. I'm also missing one of my rings, which just disappeared, and now we haven't been able to find it. It had the number 7 on it. It was because it's my life path, and it was a 7, and now I'm looking for it the other day, and I still can't find it. And just to make sure, I checked with my jeweler. I said, "Did I drop it off or something?" Because I know that I was going to get it fixed. There was a little bit of something on there, and he's telling me no, I didn't drop it off, and so I don't know where it's at. But that ring is missing now, and so is the key. That key, I don't know where it's at. That thing moves around, and I'm not even joking. There's about 24 people that can attest to that key. Now, what that key is, that's a whole nother story. If you go back to the episode, I don't know what Anthony named it, if it was Haunted Objects or he changed the name because it just sounded generic. But it was this gargoyle statue that I got sent, that was sent to me from Guatemala. And for about 2 or 3 years, I didn't know that it had anything inside of it. And then one day, the statue got moved, my dresser, it fell. And I heard something rattle around, and that thing, that gargoyle would not break. I don't know what the heck the deal was with it, but I started to touch the bottom of it to see if there was a way where they put it in, and it was just smooth. And I was like, how did they get it in there? And there was this one soft spot, and I kind of started digging, and then this key fell out. And that's the truth. And my brother, I don't know if him and Scorpio are in the chat, but they can tell you. And then Haunted Soul says, speaking of reservation, okay, whatever, dude. So anyways, dude, I try to explain it to you, but you're just going to be that way, whatever. But anyway, the key falls out of this gargoyle. And I even had a friend, my friend Jack, known him for years. And we went out onto a boat. We were out in Lake Travis, and he said, I can fix this problem. And he throws it into the lake. And I'm not joking. This is the absolute truth. I'll talk about it on the show. And that key came back. It ended up back in the house. And now the only way that key would have been found is if I would have went and got scuba gear and dived down into Lake Church. It's a pretty deep lake, and I would have been able to retrieve it somehow. And that thing, we've thrown it out of a window of a moving car. I mean, I'm not even joking. Like this is a true story. I'm not kidding. So that key, the gargoyle statue ended up, long story short, go listen to the episode if you want to hear about it. Somebody that ended up with it, their house burned down. So yeah. And that's a weird thing.
Yeah. That's no bueno.
Yeah, and for those just seeing this guy with this big old hat on, staring down at his phone, that would be Tex Wesson.
I'm not staring at my phone. I'm playing with a braid.
Oh, well, okay, well, likely, okay, well, good comeback, I guess. Texas from Texas Front Porch. If you're new here, go subscribe to him as well. Just giving out all of these.
Yeah, that's the only reason I came up.
Yeah, he wanted to get in.
Well, he came up to replace me because I got to get up early. I got to
go, and Josh is taking time out of his day, so I'm sure.
Texas coming in for me. So
Texas come out for a little bit. Josh, you can when you're ready to roll, you can roll. It's always great having you on the limited times because you are such a. This has been a great show, man. So far, we've touched on a lot of things. And Krista, I always thank you. And for those of you before she leaves, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, please subscribe. Fantastic job that she does along with Brandy. If not already, subscribe. And of course, Josh Turner, a lot of paratroopers in here, but please, if not, if it's your first time, Josh Turner, Paranormal Roundtable, and of course, Texas Front Porch.
Yep. And I'm going to let Tex take my place, and I'll see the three of you guys and everybody in chat later. Yep.
We'll see you later.
Krista.
Right.
Thank you.
Chrissy. So Krista Lawns and Booze, go check them out. They do a good job. Good friend of mine, her and Brandy both. So Anthony posted it. He says, I've personally found that key multiple times. And then further down.
So what does this, I mean, does it look different, or is it just like your average everyday key? Or
see now, Anthony, just 1 second. Anthony says it popped up in places where gotten stuff from 1,000 times, and then one day it's just out of nowhere. We have a picture of it on one of the shows that we did. It was a podcast episode, but for the YouTube listeners, like, you can't do it if you're on Spotify or
right,
Podbean or one of those other millions of platforms we're on. You can't see, but you can see it. I think on YouTube we put a picture of it on there, and it is so weird. And I don't know where it came from, but it used to have rubies on the eyes on both sides of the kid's skull, and it's got wings, and it looks very. I wouldn't keep this key around, guys. I'm telling you right now, it's not something that I would keep around. I mean, I can't get rid of it. Okay, right. And now I've had 2 remote viewers and 2 psychics, now 2 psychics, that have told me all the same thing. They've all told me the same thing, that it was connected to some brujeria, or brujeria, however you want to say it, depending on what Spanish, your lingo is. But the brujeria, it was combined with that gargoyle statue. And now that the statue, and it's been separated, it keeps just popping up, and that it's trying to find that. It has its own energy. Now, here's the weird thing about this, and I'm going to say this, and some people think I'm nuts, and I don't really care. I've had enough people think I'm nuts that you could fill a gymnasium 1,000 times. You can fill a stadium 1,000 times. But everything has its own energy and its own vibration, and in essence, its own consciousness. Okay, I know that sounds hard to believe, but it's a reflection of ourselves. Like that hat you wear all the time, Tex. It has your energy, and it shares a consciousness with you, whether you want to believe it or not. I know it's a hard thing to sell, but if you really understood the nature of the universe, the people, I'm not talking down to anybody. I'm trying to tell you and connect with you to tell you, look, this is the way it is. If you would have talked to me 5-6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have believed in the vampire thing the way I do now, because I've been told and shown, hey, this is what's happening. And now you have all these people talking about it. They're full on vampire. They really are. And they use this jokiness. They have this jokiness where they go on TV and movies, and it's soft disclosure is what it is. And there's a reason for that too. And they made it into Twilight, or whatever. They've made it into a joke. It's dusk till dawn, these beings exploding in the sunlight, whatever. And they're not this. They've made it into a big joke. They've made werewolves into a big joke. But where in the Dark Ages, people lived in absolute fear of this. Now people say, well, that's because they were ignorant. That's why it was called the Dark Ages, right? But the practice and belief of in these was up until the 1800s, all the way up until the 20th century. People were still. There's a guy, he's a friend of mine, who owns a collectibles place over there by Lakeline, and he owns pinballs. I've had the pleasure of going to his place there, and tons and tons of artifacts, things that I wouldn't bring into my house, like a suit of a samurai armored suit. I wouldn't take that into my house because you don't know what's attached to that. But he's got a lot of interesting things there. And one section, he has like several vampire hunter kits. They are real vampire hunter kits. And the oldest one is like from the 1700s, like the early 1700s. And the most recent one was from like the 1920s. So up until that time, people were still hunting these things. So you're starting to go, okay, people were still looking for these beings and trying to unalive them as recent as the 1920s, until it became like a thing of fiction. And it was just like, oh, this is not real. This is just a big joke. And these cursed objects, I'm not keeping them around for any real, whatever. Now, I do have an Egyptian mask that I got years and years ago off the black market. I'm not going to, and I acquired it from Mexico. Now, how they got it, my people down in Mexico got it for me. And I had some other things too. I have a Gurkha that's got the actual blood on it still, like it was the way it came. It was used by the Burmese. And so I was, there's a lot of artifacts that I have that, I have a Mongolian sword that looks ancient. I can't even tell you how old it is. I have like German World War II daggers. I have Australian and British bayonets. I have a naval dirk that was from the Japanese Navy during World War II. I have all kinds of things. I have Civil War pistols, 2 of them. One was from the Union, one was from the Confederate. I also have a Confederate saber. I have all these artifacts that I had. Now, a lot of them are sitting in storage now. And of course, you could make the argument that any of these things could cause these problems, but we weren't having these problems until we moved into this other house. Like things had chilled out. I lived in an apartment or, whatever.
Right.
And I wasn't having all kinds of problems. These artifacts were in my house. They were hanging up all over my walls, and I had a lot of different weapons. I had a set of Japanese swords that took 6 years to make. And there's a katana and the wakizashi, and I have those, and I have the tanto. The tanto I lost. I don't know where that's at. It was in one of the moves, and it just disappeared. Somebody snagged it. Who knows what happened to it? But the other two, they have the stamp on there. They're from Osaka. And I have a friend that makes those swords, and I've known him for years and years. And so when I did this story of the strange demons of Japan, one of those stories was about a set of haunted armor that was in the museum there, and there was a security guard that told me himself that he was there, and this thing it attacked him. Not the armor, but this being that was wearing the armor and the visage of it, which would be kind of like an avatar, I guess. But you stop and you look at all these cases, that we've covered, and it's a huge, vast amount of information. Some of these shows have gone on 3 to 5 hours. We've disseminated tons and tons of information. And at the risk of sounding like a crazy person, I'm telling you, there's a lot of things I didn't believe in that I believe in now. My whole goal was to get to the bottom of a lot of these mysteries. And I think I have in some ways, but there's so much of it out there, and it's all connected. It is all connected. I'm telling you, you think Bigfoot is not connected to the UFO abduction phenomena. I'm going to tell you something tomorrow. Come on our show tomorrow and check it out. And it's going to be open lines. So if somebody wants to come on there and talk, be my guest. And I'll debate with anybody. I'll talk with anybody. I've debated Bible scholars. I've debated all kinds of people. I've talked to just everybody.
No, what you're speaking to preachers of the choir here, because Tex can attest to this. We've been saying this for many years. I think it's all related. Like you just said, Josh. I mean, UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptids, the paranormal, they're all somehow, some way, through whatever plane, realm, whatever you want to call it, there's a connection to all these things. That's my belief. And I'll be looking forward to watching that to see what your take is on it, because it's just not coincidence, right? When it comes to this phenomenon.
Yeah, and what we're going to talk about tomorrow is a guy that he had. It was in Oregon, and it was on the western side of Oregon, near the coast. But he saw a Bigfoot. This guy was not out looking for Bigfoot; he was just hiking, and he had the Bigfoot encounter. An hour later, he was abducted, not by Bigfoot, but by something else. And so that's what we're talking about tomorrow. And that is one that now this guy has tried to talk to 2 other Bigfoot researchers and give his story, and they didn't want to hear it because it doesn't fit the narrative. It doesn't fit the narrative. That's the problem.
I really despise that. I know it's a strong word, but so many people out there talked about this. I'm sick of talking about it. People that walk around 20 years in the business and the research. You know what I'm saying?
You had it right the first time.
They're just so close-minded. I always tell a story. You had Ron Moorhead. He's coming on again with you. I remember you telling me, I've said this too. I've talked to him several times. 40 years ago, Rob, if you'd have talked to me about the woo or about Bigfoot being supernatural, I said, young man, turn around, see me some other time. Because at that time, he was just flesh and blood, this, that, and the other. Today, that guy is like all about the supernatural, the paranormal when it comes to these creatures, right? He even goes as far as saying he thinks they could be alien. So Ron is, and there's a man that's evolved with his research. He's gone down different avenues. He's willing to explore, be open-minded. That's why I respect so much about him. But there's some of these guys, man. Red is red, yellow's yellow, and that's the only colors out there. And it's just something that I just can't wrap my hands around some of these people. Why they are closed-minded. It just befuddles me, I guess.
I struggle with it all the time because of the stuff.
Well, you have lots of struggles, Tex.
I do.
Yeah.
But, I struggle with what we're dealing with all the time because I deal with it personally when I'm out in the field. And my opinion wavers from trip to trip. It really does.
Yeah.
Because you'll see something that, man, it looks flesh and blood.
Yeah.
And then the next trip you'll run into something that you can't explain.
Yeah, we got to get you on the show too, Tex. We got Paul Anthony coming on this Friday. I'd have you come on and tell your encounter, but definitely coming up here. I want to have a time where it's just you and I, so you can tell what you got to tell, or I'd bring you and Paul at the same time. Wouldn't be afraid of Paul because, you guys, you both have your own stuff, but yeah, definitely we need to, and we need to do some roundtables with us,
yeah, we do.
Doing this because I think that we need to, because we are a team, we are all together. Paranormal Roundtable is its own thing, but I couldn't be more close to anybody in the field than you two or the Blondes and Booze. Y'all are and then my go-to people, of course, Monica too.
Right.
There's so many people in this field that I really cared about and respect. Like Jason Bland. You guys went on his show, and it just really.
Good guy.
Yeah, it just brings it all together because that's what I wanted. When we were at the conference, I was just like, I was watching and everybody interact, and I was just like, there's going to be tons of collaborations from this, and it's going to be great. And so many people are going to be affected in a positive way because they're going to shift their belief from this nonsense that hasn't done anything for us to what is the truth, what is the real,
Well, Josh, I've said it a million times. I've said it once, man. If we can't at least be open-minded enough to have a conversation, we're going to be stuck in the mud just like we have the last, 75 years.
Yeah, JD.
We may not have the same opinion, but that's okay, man. I don't understand why people have such a hard problem with somebody that's just got a different opinion or they've experienced something different. They're trying to, that's just more information that we have.
Yeah, you get attacked, when you come out and say what you said. And I thought about it. It took me a couple of weeks of just praying and thinking and deciding what I was going to do. When I came out and I put myself out there with the werewolf confessions, I was just like, I don't know what to call this, but it was confessions of a person.
Well, first of all, that is a very cool name. I like that name. I like that title.
And me and Anthony and Tony came up with that because we didn't know what to call it. And we were like, we just need to call it the Confessions of a Werewolf because that's so. And then we just said Werewolf Confessions because this guy was confessing that he had confessed some pretty heinous things. And I was like, I just told him, I said, if there's something really incriminating, I don't want to know. Please don't tell me.
Right.
I don't want it to be, but he was just like, okay. So he left out some things that I'm sure were pretty barbaric. But he was basically a soldier for this werewolf cartel, I guess, because they did push these pills. And that was the thing. They pushed these drugs, and these drugs opened those people up to get this. This is the big thing here. Demonic possession. It made them more susceptible to being taken by an other, which is a demon, basically. And not all these demons were high ranking. Some of these others were weaker and younger, and some of these were more ancient. Like the elders had these attachments that they had for hundreds of years. The immortals that's a different thing. Now, the immortals, so you had these different classes of these beings. There were 4 in particular that you should really know about. The one is the immortals. Those are the ones that came here. According to their history, these beings came here almost 500,000 years ago, like 450,000, something. It predated like all this other stuff, whatever. It predated the Anunnaki. They were here when the Anunnaki came, but they were within the earth, right? And then you have the elders, and those are these beings that are way, way old people that have just been around for hundreds of years, you know. And then you have this other beings, which are like giants. And these are Nephilim that had been turned into vampirism, you know. And so their lineage goes back to Ornius and those beings from that time. And so you had these different types, you know, of beings, but it's all that same virus. I'm telling you, there's a virus, folks. I'm telling you the truth. I'm going to die sounding like a crazy person. Someday, people are going to be like, this guy's, until it comes out. It's coming out, though. It is coming out, folks. It really is. It's coming out in Hollywood. It's coming out in politics. I'm telling you, when you have presidents of countries saying, hey, and you had that guy over there in Bulgaria recently, you had the lady in France. Folks, well, I don't know if you guys use the same web, you like use a different search engine. Then don't just go to Ogle. Okay, let's just call it that. But do your research, because around the world, other people are hearing things that you're not hearing over here. Okay.
Yeah.
And I go to the Far East. I don't go physically, but I talk to people from the Far East quite a bit, along with the Middle East, and I got contacts in Europe and in South America. Now, it helps to be speak different languages and understand. Reading in multiple languages is a big deal too, and it's really not that hard to do. In fact, speaking words is actually kind of a primitive form of communication when you think about it. Most beings in this universe don't even use their mouths to speak, but we do. But think of it like this. Learning other languages is very important. People say it's very hard. Well, it's really not. It's just once you find that rhythm, you can pick it up, right? And learning the bases of these languages, which is, you know, like Latin is where, you know, Spanish, French, you know, Italian are all Latin. Right. But like, think of it like this. Words are very powerful, but it's only because of the meaning behind the word, right? Because over time, words lose their power because we don't have a collective consciousness behind that word. Take this hat, for example. This is a hat. Tex is wearing a hat, right? So we take this hat, right? And you say, it's a hat. But now let's change the word to this is a bottle. This is a bottle and this is a hat. It doesn't really matter. Right? It's not the word that actually has the power. It's the connotation. It's the meaning behind it. And you're going to understand. You could call a metal pole a tree and trees metal poles. Eventually, over time, if the collective consciousness comes together and agrees that metal poles are all trees, then the word tree becomes what the metal pole is.
Well, you know,
go ahead.
And we've talked about this, you know, so much of this goes back to intent.
The intent behind it, yeah. When you this is important. When somebody, the reason this came up is because one of the witnesses had said that she had called on the name of Jesus. Now, she asked a very important question. She used to be a Jehovah's Witness, and she says, "Why is the name of Jesus so potent?" Because she goes, "I looked it up, and his name was actually Jesus." She goes, "So how is it that we use the name of Jesus, and it actually works to repel some of these beings during these encounters?" And I told her, I said, this is very simple. The word Jesus, when now as a collective, as a consciousness, you know, a collective, we've come together as a society, and we've deemed that the name of the man who was crucified is Jesus. So you could call him anything, but people know what you're talking about. It doesn't matter. You know, I could call Tex Bubblicious Fish Eye, and eventually people would catch on and know who you're talking about. My nickname is Wolf. Everybody in Austin, in this area, in Texas, calls me Wolf. Half of the people don't even know my name is Josh Turner or even have a podcast. And they still think of me downtown as this thug that used to, you know, get into fights all the time, whatever, you know. They'd be like, oh, Wolf. Okay. Because a lot of people down there they won't think of an animal. They're going to think of me. That's
Well,
your name is Wolf. But that's
well,
not
it's the
really
same thing with me. You tell somebody that you've been talking to Jay Wesson, who the hell is going to know who
they
you are?
don't know they're Jay Wesson. They know
They
text.
don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a perfect example. Do you see what I'm saying?
That is
Like Bigfoot Rob is BMR. You think of
right.
I call him Boomer. But to me,
Yeah,
when I think of Boomer, I think of Bigfoot Rob. So when you think of Jesus, you think of the man that came down, that was sent by God, the one Most High. In my opinion, that's what I believe, and that he was here to save us and pull us out of this horrible time period that I call the Kali Yuga. The great destruction, the devouring that becomes the nothing. So he's telling us, hey, I'm here to save you from your own selves, and of course they killed him and they crucified him, but he was resurrected, so everybody knows that that's who he is. It doesn't matter what you call him. So I told her, I said, most beings in this simulation, I told them they don't use words like we do. The words, though, are important because it has a value. And it is a vibration. So speaking it actually does help to push it, because it pushes it into your ears, and then it reverberates into your soul, into your mind, and then into your body, your soul. And it saturates you with the words. That's why the is very powerful. But we don't necessarily need that. If you could just constantly be in a state of meditation, whatever, you wouldn't need that. You could find those vibrations because they exist in the universe, and they're different, like megahertz. It's very important, megahertz. One of our colleagues, Christopher Jordan, he works on binaural beats. Binaural beats are very important because you plug them in, and then it changes the wavelengths. But some people report weird things when they have these binaural beats, and that's because they're plugging into that other side, right? Through the wavelengths, through the vibration, which is sound, but sound is only important because it creates that vibration. But that's why words are important, but really and truly, it doesn't matter. Once the word takes hold, it's the collective consciousness, right? And that is, everyone comes together and we're in agreement. We are in agreement that this is reality, right? We agree that this is reality. We talked about this last night on the show. But is this the real reality, or is this just a reality we've stepped into as a toddler? You're like, hey, this is the world. I'm learning about it. And, and unfortunately you're pushed that, along that this is, you can't do this. You can do this, but you can't do that. And even the preachers will tell you what you can and can't do. And it actually goes anathema to what Jesus says. Jesus says we can do all things. With the faith of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain. The problem is that doubt creeps in because we've been conditioned from birth by school, by parenting, by whatever, the authorities in charge, the media, and then, of course, the churches and everything else. They tell you, well, you can't do that. That's impossible. But there are people who I say they have the cheat codes and they know how to do these things, and they do these things. And we are left unarmed because those people can do things. And I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound crazy, and people will challenge me, but they can shapeshift. They can change their form because they have a wholly evil belief, WHO, that belief. They have that power.
Actually, since we're on, you jumped over on shapeshifters real quick. Let me ask you something. Now, what do you think the odds are of there being some godly version of shapeshifters?
Godly form of shapeshifters? You mean as in divine? Or do you mean as in like religiously divine, or which kind? Like the Monkey King, or what do you refer to?
No, what I mean is, because when people talk about shapeshifters, you automatically go to evil. Do you think there's good ones?
Well, the reason that is simple, because we are told over and over again in the Old Testament not to, and it's predominantly a Christian theology that's
right.
And then of course it's echoed by the Islam, and I understand why it is. The Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and Islam, they're all basically saying, look, we don't totally understand all of this, so we shouldn't mess with it, which is probably a good rule of thumb. The Abrahamic faith, that they have that right. I tell people when you play with Ouija boards, have you ever been deep sea fishing? I have. And when you go out there, like I was trying to snag a marlin, I ended up with a shark.
You never know what you're going to
got a blue shark. I let it go. I mean, but it was very interesting, but yeah. And I thought about it and I'm like, we're out here in the ocean and you don't know what you're going to catch. You don't know. You have no way to know. I mean, there's so much out in that ocean. You don't know what you're going to get.
And the analogy goes even deeper than that. No pun intended. You never know what you're going to catch in the ocean, but it all has teeth.
Yeah. They all eat fish. Mm-hmm. They all eat each other, which is basically everything on the menu. Everything that's smaller than you is on the menu. And for orcas, things that are bigger than them are on the menu. Yeah. Orcas are the apex predator on Earth. I can tell you this, when you stop and you recognize, where your place is in the cosmos, you feel really small. And then you start to realize that the Ouija board and all these other spirit boxing and all that, I'm not big on that because you don't know what you're going to get. You'll get something. Yep. Well, something's going to come to you. You'll get a present under the tree, but who knows what you're going to unwrap.
So, what bothers me about people using the Ouija boards and using the spirit boxes and everything, and I've used spirit boxes. I've used a Ouija board one time in my life and I swore them off and never do it again. Because I was young and dumb, but I go back and forth. I'm on the fence with the whole spirit box thing because on one hand, I'm like, how different is this from using a Ouija board? To me, I can't. You're still trying to communicate. You're still opening the lines up, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like you were saying, you never know what you're going to catch. But whatever you're talking to, you better not believe it is what it's saying it is. And I'm not even going to get into the whole mind speak thing.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
Too, really quickly with the people that do mess with these things, specifically maybe a Ouija board. I believe, too, you can bring things through on it. But here's the problem that most people, especially if you're just, and hell, I'm a novice. I don't mess with the Ouija board. But if you're a person who's playing around with the Ouija board and do not have any idea what you're doing, the problem is when you conjure up something, if you don't close it out properly, it's released, right? And that will forever haunt you. At least that's my understanding of it.
Well, and I don't disagree with you, man. I mean, it's like we were all saying a while ago. You don't know what you're messing with.
Yeah. This guy Travis Duarte says something. He says, I took mushrooms one time and I felt really small, like a microscopic dot in this huge universe. I've heard of people taking mushrooms, Travis, and they actually have reported, well, 2 people. It's not like there's been a whole plethora of them. It's just 2. I have 2 people. One very close to me. I'm not going to say her name. And then another one that I kind of knew. It was an acquaintance that gave me a story a few months back. Well, it's been longer than that. But they reported actually becoming small on a quantum level. Now, that could be something where they came out of their body. One of them couldn't tell me whether it was or not because they couldn't get up out of the chair they were in. But I have taken, hallucinogens, years. I haven't taken anything in the last 20 years because I would probably die. But when I was young and virile, I did take things and experiment. And I took the button, with the Utes. And we all had the same. I mean, it wasn't a hallucination because we all saw it, and it was the sacred circle. And I was like, what is that? And everybody next to me was seeing the same thing. So, I mean, it was a mass hallucination? You want to call it that? I mean, but it was actually a vision. They call it a vision.
Right.
And, so, I mean, I've made no bones about things that I've done. I'm not like no angel here.
Me either.
Yeah. And so I just try to be as real as possible. And people try to come up with this, aha, we got you. You admitted you did some bad things. And like, who the hell didn't? Nobody is perfect. I mean, just be honest and quit pretending. But the only way to experience life is to, sometimes, and not always, but you push boundaries, especially when you're younger. And once you get a little older like me, you might want to stop. Because I know some goofy people older than me, and they're still doing this crap in my hometown. They're walking around geeking, and you're like, how the hell are you alive? You're not dead? Like, just like, you see them, and they're just like, oh, you're just like, dude, whoa, what the hell? You're older than me, and you're still doing this crap. But yeah, you push those boundaries, and I've done that. Now, my brother's taking DMT. And I'll let him tell. That's his deal. I've never done it, but I've taken every other hallucinogen. But one of the things I learned, though, is some of these drugs, especially ecstasy, what they're doing. And that's what these people were selling and pushing. And you're talking about a vampire cult that employs werewolves. I'm not even joking. Okay. Some of them are lycanthropes and the other ones are vampires. And they're giving you drugs. Would you take it if they came to you in their true form and said, "Here, take this"? Would you take it? I mean, you'd be like, "What the? Get the hell away! Get away from me!" What? You'd be trying.
I might. Now, I know I'm the oddball out here, but I'd probably be more apt to take it from something like that than I would.
Well, good to know that Tex would actually take a vampire, just like he's like, you would look like a man of good taste.
Or just like the Matrix. You have the blue pill, and then the red pill. You go down into Wonderland. I think that we would have taken the blue pill. I would have went to Wonderland.
Well, Haunted Soul said he'd do it in a heartbeat. Go ahead, man. Knock yourself out, bro. I would, do what you got to do, man. Yeah, and Andres Carrizales says, sounds like Underworld serves with lichens being daytime guard dogs. That is very similar, yeah. Yes. Except that the vampires here, with the exception of 3 different species, they can go out in the sunlight. That didn't bother them. But the werewolves were typically bigger, stronger guys. Like somebody like me or Tex or BMR we would have been flipped into that because they're going to tell you you're going to be a soldier. And the vampires tended to be small people, but not all of them. Some of them were bigger guys too. And so they would, and this ability they have now, it's not all the time either. Like you're not going to just be able to go lift a car or something. That's not the way it worked. This demon it's very picky and choosy, and it's kind of calling the shots. You're just along for the ride. You ain't shit. You're just a vessel. That's really what you are. And once you figure that out, you're like, dude, this is just being run by a bunch of demons, and we're just slaves. And so these guys, like one of them was telling me like he spent a lot of time in the gym. So it was Joel. And I asked him, I said, well, being a vampire, don't you have like a superhuman strength? He goes, maybe in a comic book. He goes, but not in real life. He's like, and I could do things, but it was up to this other. He's like, you're really just tethered to this demon that really calls the shots. And it's just, he goes,
it's almost like a Venom situation.
Yeah, it is. And he said, it's miserable. He goes, it's a miserable existence. Yes. Can't say the name, whatever it says, a vessel. That's what you are. You're a vessel.
Yeah.
I don't know how to pronounce your handle there, but when you stop and you listen to these people talk, and I listened to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 9 different people, 9 different people from this one particular temple who had left. And they're all kind of in a network, and it's admirable what they're doing now because some of these people are trying to rescue these other people. Now they're not totally, afraid because they are born again, and they have a belief that they are, protected, by Christ. Right. And one of them was saved by the other. Like Joel, he was saved by another, but somebody that just said, hey, I'm not afraid of this anymore, and I'm going to rescue this guy. And that's how it happened. Charles just went up in there with his friend, and they got him, because they weren't going to let these people stop them. And they knew they couldn't stop them because they had the power of the Holy Spirit, where they were believers in Christ. He says, dude, it was like hours of prayer, and they fasted. It was like a 4-day fast. And prayer, and they were in this church that was like an underground church. Like there's a church, but not an underground like below the earth, but like secretly, that's what they do is they rescue people from these satanic cults. And now I got to talk to the pastor from that church. I'm not going to say his name. I'll say the first was G. I call him G. But G told me, G says, look, he goes, I've rescued over 200 people from these different cults. He goes, they're everywhere. These covens, these cults, these packs of evil, shapeshifters doing everything you can. He goes, I even had someone that was the son or the daughter, whose their grandfather was a skinwalker on the reservation. And he said, dude, this guy was really, really evil. He was into some dark stuff. And his son, I guess it would have been his granddaughter. So it would have been his son was kind of forced into becoming like a slave for him and accepting one of these others and becoming a skinwalker. But he had humanity in him. And before this thing literally killed him, he saved his daughter. And he was able to go and minister, and they went as a team. These former people that had this knowledge of it, and they went there on the reservation, and they put hands on this woman, and they cast out this demon. And this thing, when it jumped out of her body, it looked just like a werewolf, like a black demonic werewolf. Now, you Tex had Jason Bland on your show, and of course, he was on my show. When he had he had one on him, an attachment, right? And I'll say something I've never said before. I'm going to say it here. I'm going to say it. I had one too. But first, I'm going to tell you about Jason's. When he finally got to see this thing, he said it looked wolf-like. It was demonic like a wolf, right? Okay, so I had something that was on me. It was the spirit of violence, and it was aggression, and it was anger. And I had it when I was running around downtown, and I was doing all kinds of nefarious activities. And it required of me basically, I didn't know that it was really like there, I could feel this other around me, and it wanted me to do, violence. And so I was quick to fight with people. And I feel like it was giving me this energy, and I kind of knew in my heart that it was there. You know what I mean? And I could feel this in my back.
Well, see, I guess I had kind of the same thing going back when I was younger, Josh, because it got to where I enjoyed fighting,
Because if you're good at it.
enjoyed the pain and
you've got to be good at it to enjoy, because no one likes their ass beat every time they.
Well, I'm not saying I was, some badass, but I'm a wimp. But anyway, it was. I mean, it brought, I didn't have to be mad. That was the scary part with me.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be mad.
And if you get too angry, though, it clouds what you're trying to do.
Right.
So my anger would just be channeled, and focused on what I was doing. And there's many people downtown. I didn't want to talk about that too much, because there's always somebody that's going to go, hey, talking about Kepias. Dude, you have no idea. It was a spiritual thing to me. I mean, it really was. And it was like when I had hundreds of people who witnessed these things I did to these people. I mean, you're thinking it's almost like a game when somebody is so much slower than you. And when you're 350 pounds and you're faster than they are, and you're stronger than they are by 1,000,000 miles, how fair is that fight? And some of these guys were bigger than me. Some of them weren't. Some of them were a little bit smaller. It didn't matter. They would get annihilated. Until you come to the realization that, hey, this is something demonic.
Right.
This is something evil that's living off of me. And so I had to get rid of this thing. I had to cast it off. And I look at it like on that with Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, when he fought Venom on there, when he was all like, hey, man, because you felt great. He's walking around and he's like, he feels liberated now because he's got Venom on him, and he is the ultimate badass. That's how I felt like all the time downtown. I was like, dude, I'd fight anybody because I know I'm going to whip your ass and your friends' asses and whoever else you want to bring here, and it's going to be a spectacle, and I'm going to enjoy it. But it was something that was feeding off of that.
Right.
And I promise you, no matter what it is evil that you're doing, if you're enjoying it, there is something that's feeding off of that. I had a friend who used to be in porn. Not like he was, was straight, but he was doing this stuff, and he was miserable, because when you're not doing the actual whatever, you're miserable,
Right.
So he would always want to get that fixed. So eventually he went into porn, and he started, and he got to be with all these beautiful women, but they're all tainted and just disgusting people, just like he was. And when he did that, I was like, his name was Joe. And I was like, Joe, just knock yourself out, man. Great for you. He would tell us all this stuff, and he would fly out to California and then come back, and he ran a nightclub, and I was just like, he didn't even need the money. He was doing it because it was a sex addiction.
Right.
And he was doing it, and he had photo albums of hundreds of girls that were posing for him, and just like he would take pictures with them, and it was just like he'd have these crazy parties, and he would bring some of these girls to these parties, and you're going like, dude, these women have been with hundreds of people. And I talked to one of them. I sat there one night and I talked to one of them by a swimming pool, and I just listened to her, and I was like, what in the heck, She got into it by drugs because it was an addiction and she needed money for it. But then she got off the drugs and she kept doing it because then she had another addiction, which was sex. And get this, she was seeing this shadow being behind her in the mirror sometimes that looked like a demonic, a black female, not a African-American, but like not African, like it was black as in black, like black of my shirt. And it was like this black harpy looking creature. And then dude, this thing was feeding. I need to tell her story one day. I haven't talked to her in years, but she worked as a stripper here in Austin, and I had recognized her because my brother used to work at a strip club back in his crazy days. And I would go there once a year on his birthday. I didn't hang out in strip clubs. And I would go there once a year on his birthday. We'd celebrate his birthday. And my uncle always liked to go with me, and so we would go. And my friend Chris Trammell, he was a professional kickboxer for years. He trained. He was in Phuket, Thailand. And you can go look up Chris Trammell. He's coaching, I think. No, I don't think he's with Lions Den anymore, but he used to be. But he was with he's in Las Vegas right now. Just look him up. He's on my Facebook, whatever. He's called Trauma, and he's a badass kickboxer, great coach. He's got a couple UFC fighters he's coaching now. This guy, though, had an incredible life. He got imprisoned in Phuket, and he ended up seeing something that was attached to him because he was violent. He ran that strip club with my brother, and he had an attachment. I'm telling you. And it was this bird-like thing that had like stick-like limbs. I'm not even joking. Like, I'm telling you. I know that because Tony's stepdad and me used to train. And so he told Tony's stepdad about it. And when me and him talked, I still want to get him on the show, but he's like me, super busy guy. But this is crazy. Like, these fighters, a lot of them have attachments. These people that are sex workers, they have attachments. People that are addicted to certain drugs, they have attachments. And that's how they get you. They hook you. They hook into you. And these are literally entities that are attached to you, your lower spine, and they lock into your chakras, they block it up, and they seize into the back of your neck, right? And they take over your body, your soul, your mind, and you got to get rid of them. You got to throw them off. And it was hell trying to get mine off, and it was a lot of prayer and it just was a lot of work. I could write a whole book about trying to release myself from this, and it wasn't instantaneous. It was more of a gradual thing. When my brother got his attachment off of him, it was a guy named David Soto who was a Buddhist, but he was a Christian by faith, but Buddhist by philosophy. And yes, that is how it is, because Buddhism is actually philosophy. And I watched my brother levitate about 2 or 3 inches off the ground. I saw it with my own eyes. I'll take that to my grave. I saw it. So you can argue, I saw it clear as day. I saw what happened. And he took that thing. Well, he didn't, but in the name of Christ, he took it off of him. And so whenever when somebody said how thick a Tongan skull is, I have a story about the Tongans because it's funny. I got into a fight with some Tongans at the club one time, and it was one of the only times where I'd ever actually hit a girl. And so there were 4 of them, and I actually got into a fight, and I was outside, and this police officer's in my face, and they're like, "Did you or did you not assault this woman?" And I'm like, "Huh?" Like, I was like, because this cop was like trying to get to the bottom of it. Everybody's drunk, and everybody's getting pulled out, And I wasn't working there anymore, but some of my bouncers were still there, and I had been gone for about a year, but I went in there to drink or whatever, have a party, whatever. And they came and got me because Tongans are big people. These are some big boys. And it was a full-blood Native American guy. I've known him for years. His name's Philip, and he came in. He's Chippewa. He came. He says, "Wolf, we got a problem." He goes, "These guys over here, they're big. I don't know if they're what they are, Samoan or some kind of Polynesian, whatever." And I went over there. I started talking to him. One of them's Tongan. He's like, "What's your problem, man?" And he's like, "Well, we're just having fun." And I said, "Well, can we take the beer? We need to take your beer." And he goes, "Who are you, man? Who are you?" They're being real rowdy. And the guy puts the beer, he starts drinking it, and I said, "Dude, it's already 2:15, man." And so he goes, basically he told me, he's like, look, white boy, if you could take this beer from me, then you could have it. And so instead of doing the right thing and just taking the beer from him and so let him finish, who cares? I went like that. And then the beer bottle went into his mouth and broke his teeth. And then the next thing you know, I'm punching and fighting with 4 or 5 different people. And one of them had this like one of these like blue, what do you call it? Like a plaid overshirt or whatever, and was throwing down like a dude. Turns out that was a woman. I didn't know it. After the fight, I looked down, they're sitting there, and I'm like, did I hit her? I said, I looked at the cop, and this person stood up, and I was like, she's as big as me. And I'm like, I said, dude, come on. That's I mean, it's a woman, but I didn't know it was a woman, you know? And so, no offense to anybody that's Tongan, but I'm saying, like, Tongans are big people, man. Like, these were big guys, and I was a big dude, and the bouncers had to come and get me. You know, the biggest guy that they had was this Turkish dude that was, you know, and he wasn't big enough to fight these guys. And so I had to go over there and go to work and help, you know. And so this dude, you know, they let me go because they had, you know, they didn't press charges and we didn't press charges, and everybody was, you know, got into a big fight. But they got worked over a little bit, and this person turned out to be a woman. Now, I didn't know that at the time. But that woman punched me so hard in my face that my face swelled up, and I thought it was a dude.
Yeah.
So, you know, the only times in a bar, actually the only time in a bar I've ever hit a woman was that time. But in my defense, I thought it was just, and one of them had their hair braided. It was a guy. She had her hair braided the same way. I thought it was just 2 guys, and the other dude had his hair kind of back, you know, whatever. I didn't realize who they were, what they were, you know. And I just said, you know, I tried talking to them, and that didn't work. They were just basically like real crappy and like F off, you know. And it turned into a big brawl. But yeah, so yeah, I haven't done that. A lot of whatever, but I eventually, and now I don't. I was angry. I was always violent. I had this attachment on me, and I would see it sometimes moving around the room, and then when Joel and Charles and all of them were Samantha and Eve were telling me about all this, they were talking about these things that would move around the room when they first got connected with these things. And I was like, holy crap. I was like, that's probably what it was. When I was going to sleep, you know, or whatever, I would see it moving around, but that thing was on me. It was attached. I mean, it was an attachment, you know, a venom-like attachment, and it was feeding.
Well, they're nothing but parasites.
Yeah, they're all parasitic. That's what they are. Yeah, for sure.
They do you no good. You know, they make you think that they are.
Mm-hmm. They're going to send you to hell. I mean, that's because they co-opt your thinking, and it's a parasitic thing. And I think that the vampire virus, which really does exist, and I tell you that it infects people. But this is how they do it. They infect it, you know. And then the byproduct of this, now people have talked about this, and people have seen Ghostbusters, of course. It's, you know, it's ectoplasm. The ectoplasm in this situation, though, the byproduct is this black goo. And I kid you not. That is really what it is. And
that's not the first time I've heard that, though.
No, the goo is a real thing. You know, the first time we encountered it and talked about it was one of the episodes. I think it was a Halloween episode where we talked about this blob goo stuff that it came out of the drain at this club or bar. And now BMR Boomer knows, running a club. I ran a club. We both were in the club business for years, almost a decade for me. I can tell you that those drains get pretty nasty, like pretty gnarly. So when they were telling me, I'm like, maybe you need to clean your drain. And they were like, no, this stuff had like an actual consciousness to it. It was coming up out of the drain. And I remember I did the interview with Armando. He's the late Armando Salazar was my co-host, and we looked at each other. Armando, 16 years in the military, he encountered something like the black goo. Unfortunately, he never got to tell the story, but he was like, he looked at me and he goes, that's crazy. And so Tony was there too. We were all on a call with this person telling us about this. And, you know, so we started doing more and more research. And of course, we had people that were listening to us because I was on Dogman Encounters for years. Right. And so people were like coming to me and saying, hey, man, you know, when I had my encounter, there was this black goose, you know, and it just went from there because And this is the way he does his show. But the guy that did his show, those dogman counties, at that time, he didn't want any of that on his show. He did not.
Right,
and I
right.
had a lot of stuff that was getting into the woo, and he didn't want it. And I understand, because at that time they had this, there was like this lockdown on anything woo.
Mhm.
They were all over us about it. And I kept telling everybody, my friends, in the field, I'm like, I think there's more to this than this is more spiritual than physical. And, I was one of the voices at that time they were trying to drown us out. And I kept saying, this is not correct, guys. We're going in the wrong direction. This is why we've been walking around with no evidence. And so I just kept on and kept on and kept on. We have to get to the bottom of this. And in order to get to the bottom of this, we have to ask some hard questions. And I think those questions were being avoided, and they were being stifled. And there was this cabal that had a stranglehold. And that was, of course, what led to the first sort of war that I got involved in, because I was, I had to defend what I thought was the truth. And then, of course, that led to the next one and the next one, and it just kept going. But it's going to keep happening, because these people, they don't want to live in the real reality. They want to be in this whatever they want to live in, and it's not correct. It's not. And so there has to be some, I don't want to say accountability, because that's almost like saying that everybody needs to be policed, but there has to be accountability amongst us peers that are starting to understand, and those that have been in it for a while that know, and that those that are coming along, especially the new guys, you're looking for a phantom. Okay. Talk to these guys like Ken and Lyle, these guys, they've been around forever, and they can't find this elusive creature. It's this large. It is a physical thing, but it's also not. It's a metaphysical thing. It's a sub-natured being.
See, I'm not
all connected.
But see, my deal is, Josh, and I'll talk to you to nauseam about this. I mean, we've had many conversations. I'm just not convinced it's the same phenomenon.
No, and it's all connected, but it's not the same phenomenon.
Yeah,
but
the problem is we've got so many different things going on, and a lot of people, and I'm starting to see a corner turned here. Mm-hmm. But for a long time, all this stuff that was happening, everybody was shoving it into a Bigfoot box.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're starting to take the pieces out, and I think really we don't understand what we're dealing with. We don't. We sort of do. And Rob's pushing buttons. And
if you need us to get out of here, Rob, it's okay. We
no, I was looking at. Never mind.
It's like
up to you, Josh. What do you want?
Somebody's giving you the light at the back. You have 5 minutes.
He's like, "Hey, finish your beer and get out."
Yeah, right. We about half-ass understand what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
at best.
Mm-hmm.
But we're turning the corner, I think, understanding that not everything fits in one box, and we're starting to take it out a piece at a time. Is it all connected? Yeah, but we don't know how. I think that's, it's.
Well, that's the big mystery. We don't know.
Yeah.
How. We know it's connected. Well, we think it's connected.
I mean, just here recently in the last several months, Josh, I've had these encounters that I've kind of talked about, the pale crawler thing that I've never seen before, and actually grabbed my leg and tripped me down the stairs, or tripped me off the stairs. But it's things like that when you're out there looking for critters, and these ain't physical critters you're looking at. That there's no way in hell that was. This thing went up the side of the pole barn. It was nothing but wire, like it looked like Spider-Man going up on top of this thing. It was quick, man, quick. But I've never seen anything like that. I want to see it again, because I'm just that type. I'm like, okay, I saw you once.
Curiosity.
Yeah, let's figure out what you are.
Yeah.
If I can. But they're cowards too.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to be seen. That's why they're called the hidden ones. And it is putting everything in one box. That's what in the Middle East, in the Levant, the Jews, they call them the Shadim, and or the Dibuk, and then the Arabs call them the Jinn, or the Adharit, or the Ifrit. But they are just putting it all into one box, and the Christians are just demons. They're demons. Everything's a demon, and it's not the case. That is not the case. There's so many different entities going, and it's not all the same phenomena. It is not. No. There are those that try to say it's all the same, but it's not, because if it was all the same and they were all the same, you wouldn't have the red wall that was erected by men working with the jinn to keep this other type of demon out. You wouldn't have different types of these vampires. You wouldn't have the giant Nephilim looking kind that are totally different than these other ones. And then you have these original ones that came from nobody knows where, because it goes so far back that nobody really knows. And they've been a part of our history for a long time. And they spread this sort of a virus. Like when the reptilians encountered them, part of them fell to the vampirism. And that's what the vrils, that's what that's based on. It's a vampirism. It's a reptilian vampirism, but not all reptilians are vampires. There's just a specific subset of them that became that. That just shows you how they can, that virus or whatever it is, the parasite can infect anybody. Because there's this worm that it looks like little seeds, is what they were telling me, inside this goo. And sometimes their blood, which or not blood, that goo would drip out of their eyes, and they could be anywhere, and it could happen. And that's why people see that, because like this one guy was telling me, he's like, I was eating dinner at a restaurant, and he goes, and they don't really eat like we do. They just they eat real light. They don't need to eat. And if they eat too much, it actually makes them sick. Now, lycanthropy, the lycanthropes, they eat like meat constantly. They'll eat raw meat even. That's what they did. But the vampires, he says, dude, it started dripping out of my eye. My wife got all freaked out. He goes, I had to run to the restroom and then convince her that it didn't happen the way that she saw it. And eventually they all kind of have to come clean. Like, look, this is going on, and they are, when they changed their life, they had to tell their spouse and their whoever, not all of them have even told their children, but the spouses have to at least be aware of it, and it's like, look, you can't run around and tell everybody this, because if you do, we'll be killed. Mm-hmm. And they have ways of getting rid of you that doesn't even look like a murder, But anyway, Michelle says, do all vampires werewolves have the black goo? I think so, but I don't know for sure. I don't know 100%, because there's all kinds of different types. Because like Joel was saying, like he had seen these other ones, and he knew what we quote unquote werewolves. I mean, that's just a generic term, but he had seen those, and he'd seen these other ones. He's like, these may be the dogman that you're talking about. He goes, but he was convinced they were from the inner earth. Because he had been to the inner earth. Well, the first level of it. And then there was a guy who got in touch with me who, after some research, I think he was a real guy. He went by the handle of Rex Rude, and he had a very interesting story. And I told it on the show, and I said, look, this may be this guy's BS fantasy. It may not, but I told what he said he did, and he descended down into the inner earth. And it's very interesting, because it's almost like what Quetzalcoatl did, which he descended the 9 levels of the spirals of the earth. But this guy went down into the inner earth, and he takes credit for being one of the beings that helped to bring the Vril to prominence here. He also says he's 300 years old. I don't know if that's true or not, but he says that he was one of the people that was pivotal in getting them established and to helping them get control so that they could unite the different factions and take over the earth. I mean, and so there is a power struggle between the regular reptilians or the Draco. There's a lot of different reptilians, but the Draco and this vampire Vril, they're two different things. They're from the original source of, whatever. They're the same species, but they became two different factions. And so just to wrap this up, it's getting late, whatever. These people, what they did was, though, they have these cliques, and so this guy Rex was one of the ones that went down as a human, and and supposedly help them to click together. He takes credit for that. I don't know. But when I was talking to the people that were in this, call it a cult or the cartel, whatever you want to call it,
Right.
they were saying that that's probably right because they had heard rumors of that. So either that guy was involved somehow and he knew the rumors, or that's really him, which he's kind of a legend in their world. And so they said, if that's true, that this guy was paying attention and he heard what you were saying, he's like, then you got their attention for sure. So the only thing you could do when you're under the microscope is just act accordingly. I mean, there's nothing else I can do if they're going to do what they're going to do, and stay prayed up.
Yep.
Because I'm fully convinced that even if they take my life, that I know where I'm going. And that's
I'm with you.
Jesus Christ. So I'm not worried about it. Somebody says Vril is Society of Medium Women. Yeah, that's not really what they are. That is not what they are. The Vril, the actual Vril, not these people. They're not people. They're not people at all. That's a cover or whatever. The truth is they're actually demons. They live in the earth. I'm telling you. Well, they're reptilians, and it's not these whatever. I don't know what that is. The women, that whatever. But they're actually called the Vril, right? And those people that are the humans that are kind of like the storefront. Like you put a mannequin up there and say, this is the storefront. And then you have what's in the back, You go into a place and you say, do you got anything else in the back, that's better than what you got up here,
Like the speakeasies in the back.
Yeah, because those are window dressing. Those are people that are like practicing because they're into the occult and they're able to channel like these things spiritually, because these things travel astral on the astral plane.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not trying to be rude or correct you, whatever. Yeah, Thule and Vril Society. Yeah, the White Order of Thule is another one, very interesting. You get into the whole legends of the land of Thule. That's a very interesting legend too. The Nordic legends, the giants and the dwarves and all that. But anyway, it's
been fantastic for one.
Yeah.
As always. You always bring a nice crowd. We held a nice solid 275 all night. We almost hit 300. Josh, it's always a pleasure, always full of knowledge, information. I always appreciate when you come on. And you've got, you're on how many days a week you're on? Almost, you've been on every day, it seems, lately.
Yeah, it's Monday. On Mondays, we have like the call-in show. People can call in and tell their encounters, and it's fun time. Tuesday, we just drop a podcast episode, which goes to all these other platforms. And then Wednesday, we do retelling of people's encounters. Thursday, we take off. But this Thursday, we're going to have Ron Moorhead's podcast episode so I could come on with you guys and not interrupt. And then Friday, we do a guest. Typically, like we have a guest. So we're going to have Paul Anthony on this coming from Paranormal World. What is it? Paranormal Paul?
Paranormal Among Us.
Paranormal Among Us. So he's going to be our guest on Friday, and then Saturday we're off, and then Sunday we have the big show, which usually is where we have we retell somebody's encounters. It's like a really good, So let me answer this real quick. You said that they created a society in Germany, study the energy. Yeah. What these things though, what they do is the Vril is in not talking about that. There's a type of reptilian that use an energy from humans. They consume it. And they can do it different ways, and they're called the Vril. All of these other societies or whatever, everything that spun off from that is not. And maybe I did because you don't know what I'm talking about. There are two different factions of Draco, and the Vril, the energy. Yeah, it's a type of energy, whatever. But that's not what this is. That's just what they use, and they use humans as cattle. And they use us as blood, as whatever. Now the Draco do too, but it's kind of like with them. It's kind of like the Draco, the regular Draco. They eat us, right? Like physically, we eat you, And the Vril just drain your blood, and they can drain your energy too. Now some people have called them the Darrow, and that's not what they are. The Darrow are an ancient race of humanoid dwarfs. Now that's a whole nother.
Yeah,
we could get into a show on that. I don't know Yuju. You should come on to our channel and check it out. And like somebody said, yeah, World Bigfoot says Hyperborea. Yeah, dude. So we could go get all into that, dude. Like the Smoky God. I mean, I've read all this stuff. I mean, you have these the inner earth, you know. We've talked about it, all Lemuria, you know, just so many different types, you know, Shangri-La, you know. I mean, there are all these openings to the inner earth, and there are so many different species of beings down there. Now, Barton Nunley once said this, and Barton, me and I aren't, like I said, we used to be friends. But it's crazy. He's like, you know, we talked about this. He says, you know, he interviewed a guy one time, and I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember him saying that he told him, you know, he goes, if we were walking on this earth, you could see down below and see what you were walking on, you wouldn't even want to move. You wouldn't believe the stuff that's down there. So these vampires that I had interviewed, former, you know, cult members or whatever, that had these attachments and could do things like vampires, and they drank blood, and they were very vicious monsters. They could become monsters, shape-shifting into like something that looks like a piranha with their teeth and everything. And they were scared to go down to the second level of the earth because of all the unstable phenomena down there.
Wow.
So yeah, but we could get into it all, you know, whatever. Is that Duke Sullivan? Is that Duke?
Yeah.
Duke, I'd love to have you come on the show. You know, I've heard a lot about you, and it would be interesting to talk and chop it up with you. Another person I'd like to get Bigfoot Dwarf. I'd like to get you to come on. And tomorrow night it's going to be open. I'm gonna talk about a guy's encounter, a guy from Oregon. And I think we're finishing it up with him early in the morning tomorrow. I got to get on the phone with him, and then we're gonna talk about his encounter because he got abducted. You know, so and then you know anybody's welcome to jump on. I'm gonna open up the lines, and we can have people that can jump on, and then you could give me your opinion, and you don't have to agree with me. Yeah, and I do know what you're saying. There is a society called the Vril Society, but they're talking about an energy, a psychic energy that they can use. You know, they get that energy from somewhere, and the name comes from something. And I'm telling you right now that it's from this pack of lizards, for lack of a better term. And it sounds crazy. Right. It's all going to eventually start to come out more and more. And you think it's big stuff happening, coming out now. It's going to get worse and or better, depending on who you are. It's just becoming more and more and more. So that's basically what it is.
Well, once again, man, it's been a fantastic show as always, Josh. Thanks for taking out your time. And again, subscribe to Paranormal Roundtable, if not already. A lot of you have. A lot of paratroopers in the house tonight. Thanks for coming on in. If you're new to me, subscribe to Bigfoot Texas Front Porch, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Shout out to my buddy Duke out there, also World Bigfoot Central. I want to thank Keith, T-Bone, Midnight Smoker, Kelly, Alan, Joe, Alan again, Eddie, Mary Ann, Diane for the awesome super chats and pirate memberships. I appreciate it. Not expected, always appreciated, of course. And tonight is Tuesday. Wednesday, I don't know. Tex, you're on. When are you on again, Tex?
I'll be on tomorrow morning at 8:00.
Tomorrow morning. Well,
that's so early.
Wow, Tex.
That's my morning show, brother.
Wow.
Waking up weird.
Yeah, well,
somebody's got to do it, I guess. Abe's got the night shift. You got the day shift.
Yeah,
he's got it covered there.
Yeah, you got it covered. I will be
back. Me and Paul actually do a morning show.
Paul. And text you and I have Dr. Dean Bertram Thursday for the afternoon.
I love Dean. I love old Dean, man.
Dean's got a lot of interesting.
Yeah. He'll be at our conference speaking, so we're gonna draw. He's been traveling, man. He's been promoting his new documentary, so we're gonna talk about that Thursday.
Tell him I'd like to get him on too. I mean, there's so many people that I need to record with.
Yeah, man, I'll talk to him on Thursday. I usually talk to Duke. I can get him hooked up with you, and
I'd love to talk
Dean and that, and then we always have our late night Saturday with the girls, and sometimes Tex if he's not moonlighting on the paranormal portal. That is.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody too for subscribing to our channel. We hit 40,000. We're almost at 41,000, and it's rolling.
Congratulations, man.
Very happy about that.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Lots of people on the podcast episode, podcast channels too. So everything's blowing up. The vampire book should be out by the end of April. And then I have another one that's coming out about just about the paranormal in general. And then there's a project we're doing with my brother, and that should be a couple months out too. But they're all going to be coming out, boom, boom, boom. And that's about the house we used to live in, because that's just its own crazy thing, you know. But we're going to keep pushing and keep doing what we got to do. And I support you guys. If you're a paratrooper, please, I implore you, paratroopers, come and subscribe to these guys' channels. I mean, help them grow. Let's help our allies grow, because that's what we need. We all need to work together in this. You got a few people who are they were hatched wrong and they're weird, you know, and they're evil. Just stay away from them. But you got
the appropriate word, they were hatched.
Yeah. Yes. And so you got us here, and you know, Rob, a very good friend of mine for a long time, and so Tex too, you know, and so I really like listening to you guys' show when I get a chance. Sometimes when I'm just doing, you know, work stuff, scheduling, things like that, I'll find you guys and I'll just put it on, you know, and I just listen, you know, but I don't always get to chat or whatever, because and somebody said something I was rude or something because I didn't say hello to every single. I don't have time for that.
Yeah,
I can't because I just say hello to one person and they're like, why didn't you say hello to me?
Yeah, that's why it's almost, you say hi to one or say hi to nobody. You have a lot of people. It's just hard to do, you guys. You try to listen to the guys. I mean, it's tough. It's tough finagling everything, talking, typing, listening, asking questions. It's an acquired skill, you guys. So we've practiced at it for sure. But once again, though, Josh, thanks, and it was a great show as always.
Tex, are you going to be down in San Antonio for the?
Yes, I am. I will see you there.
Okay. I will mark it on my calendar. What day exactly? 10 days, you said. So
I'll be there. Well, the conference is the 29th. I'll be down there Friday.
Okay. So I'll head down there. I'll go down there and I'll pop in and I'll hang out with you guys.
Cool. Yeah,
maybe one day I'll be cool enough to be invited by the Kling brothers to be more than a vendor.
Breezy's going to be. Well, this is the last time they're doing this. They're retired.
Oh, really? Well, maybe they'll never invite me then.
Breezy's going to be there. Monica's going to be there. Brandy and Krista's going to be there, and I'm bringing Nick with me. Yeah, it's gonna be a good time.
Nick who?
Nick Shaughnessy. He's been out in the field with us a couple of times. A lot of people call him Little Tex. Kid's 23 years old. You know, I mean, he's got a channel, but his channel is pig hunting.
Oh wow! Well, I've done a lot of that. I'm not fond of how they are tearing up the whole South here. It's not. People don't get it. I wear that boar tusk.
Yeah,
they're like, it's the Leviathan or whatever they call it.
It was a baby dragon's tooth.
Baby dragon's tooth. And I'm like, dude, if I had a baby dragon's tooth, I'd be rich right now. We'd all be on an expedition to some other country.
No, his channel's called Boar Torn. And he's last time I talked to him, he had 80-something thousand subscribers. I mean,
that's a big thing. I used to watch those guys ride around in 4-wheelers.
Yeah.
You know, shooting them, you know, and if it was any other animal, I might feel bad, but these things have done some destruction, and they are just nasty, dude. I have a pig. He's a pet pig, Truffles. He's a sweetheart. Truffles wouldn't know what to do if he ran in one of those pigs. He'd run away scared. He's so timid, but, you know, he was raised around, you know, with like his best friend is a puppy, a golden doodle, and they were raised together. So I don't know what Truffles knows, if he knows that he's a pig or he thinks he's a cat or a dog.
Probably thinks he's a dog.
Yeah, he probably does. I think he's just, you know.
That reminds me of a Star Trek episode, The Trouble with Tribbles. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was kind of corny. But anyway, great show, Josh. Thanks for popping in and giving Krista a break. She had to go to bed. Love everybody. Hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe, like, and share. And we're on all of us combined are on 7 days a week. The alert bell, turn it on. You'll find us. I'm BMR for Josh for Tex.
Yeah, I'll see you guys.
All right.
Later, guys.
All right.
This is the future. Evolution.
The Crossing Realms Conference launches September 19th and 20th and will dock in Richmond, Missouri. This is already being called the event of the year, folks, with an unprecedented list of speakers and special guests, 2 days of cryptids, UFOs, and paranormal presentations, along with a celebrity-filled ghost hunt, meet and greet, gallery reading, vendors, and a film screening. This promises to be both educational and fun. Go to eventbrite.com to secure your tickets and vendor slots before they are all abducted. They're going fast.